You're not going to have to cancel. Good evening. Our mission is to create a safe and caring climate and culture in which we prepare, engage, educate, empower, and inspire all learners in partnership with their surrounding community to be successful in today's and tomorrow's society. It is 7 p.m. on February 22nd, and at this time I'll call this meeting of the St. Cloud School Board to order. Mr. Mose, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, and now would you call roll?
Mr. Chair, roll of the board, Shannon Haas.
Here.
Jerry Von Korf. Here. Jeff Pulrice.
Here.
Al Dahlgren.
Here.
Bruce Mose here. Monica Segura Schwartz.
Here.
And Bruce Henches.
Here.
Record will show that we're joined this evening by Superintendent Willie Jett, Assistant Superintendent Monica Beisch, Executive Directors Gary Ganji, Amy Scalarud, Adam Holm, Lori Posh, Carol Potter, and Director Tammy DeLand.
Thank you. First item on the agenda tonight is the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of non-controversial items that the board routinely adopts without debate. Any single member of the board may remove an item from the consent agenda by requesting removal at the time the consent agenda is moved for adoption. The full text of items can be found at the end of the agenda. On tonight's consent agenda is the approval of tonight's agenda, the approval of the minutes from the meetings of January 25th and February 7th, 2018, the approval of the monthly treasurer's report for December 2017 and January 2018, approval of payment of bills and other financial transactions in the grand total amount of $5,169,517.42. Approval of personnel and staff changes. Acceptance of grants, awards, and donations. And G, Quarry View Education Center change orders totaling plus $22,397.59. Before we move this item, I want to let everybody know I recuse myself from item F, number 2, donations to Kennedy. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Al, I'll also have to recuse myself then too.
Okay. From the...
Yeah, I made donations to Westwood, probably for the same reason.
Okay.
I may misheard. What's happened to item 6? Has that been amended? Is that gone?
Item 6.
The closed meeting.
The closed session is at number... It's at the bottom of the agenda.
And
it's not on the consent agenda.
Okay, so the discussion about whether to close, we're not voting on whether to close the meeting at the present time.
Well, we're voting to approve tonight's agenda, and that would be an agenda item, yes. It's agenda item...
If by voting that we're going to close the meeting, then I would like to remove that from the consent agenda. If we're merely using it as a placeholder to have a motion at that time to discuss that, then I don't.
I would see it as we have to have a motion to close the meeting, correct? So this would be in there as a place. I mean, we're going to have a motion and a second and a vote of the board to close.
But the motion that we're making now is not agreeing to close the meeting.
No.
Okay. Then
It's just
fine.
on there as an agenda item. Yes, Bruce.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay. And I'm looking for a second.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. Jeff and I are recused from a portion of item F. Is there any further discussion? If there is no further discussion, Mr. Mose, would you call roll?
Maker of the motion, Bruce Henches.
Yes.
Second maker of the motion, Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Monica Segura Schwartz.
Yes.
Bruce Mose, no. Jerry Von Korf.
Yes.
Shannon Hawes. Excuse me. Jerry Von Korf, Jeff Pulrice. Nope, you guys are excused. Okay.
I think they're voting
Mr. Chair,
yes
take-
on,
We're voting yes on the consent agenda, but recusing from item F.
That's right.
So yes, for me.
I'm all confused.
Yes, also, Bruce.
Can we do this again? Can we do this again?
No, I don't think we need to do it again. Everybody voted, so that's good. We can move on to the second item, the next item on the agenda. Information items. The first item is Local Education and Activities Foundation LEAF report, the annual report. Elizabeth Reisinger, LEAF Board of Directors President.
Oops. Hit enter? Yep. Okay, thank you. Look at this. There we go. Excellent. All right. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Reisinger. I'm the current president of LEAF, the Local Education and Activities, thank you, Foundation. I'm a little bit green with LEAF. Haha, that's a good pun. I've actually only been on the board for 3 years. I've been the president for the last year and will continue into this year. And I'm actually pretty new to St. Cloud. I moved here in 2009. And I live in Sartell. I actually live in the sweet spot. All my kids could walk to every single school they would go to. Yet, I open enroll to Madison to the Chinese immersion program. And I couldn't be happier. In fact, I love this slide because that's the Madison kids. And I was just there today for conferences, and that hangs as you walk in the door, and kids walk by and point at themselves. So it's a pretty cool picture. So this is our annual review of what LEAF's been up to, and you know what? We've been up to a lot. I hold LEAF pretty close to my heart, so it's a pretty important organization, obviously, because I've got a first grader and a fourth grader right now. So here's our mission. Just a quick review. I don't need to read it. You guys are all excellent readers. However, I include this because as LEAF grows and expands, just as the district deals with this, we look at our mission, and everything that comes to LEAF, we go back to the mission. And in fact, we do say no to things because it doesn't fit into the mission. Our mission is to serve District 742. That's our mission. And whatever falls out of scope, we say no to. So we do come back to this continually. We look at this a lot, and actually it almost comes up at every board meeting. So we're pretty proud of the mission, and we'll continue to look at this as we move forward as an organization. Give you an idea of the funds as we grow the impact. We started in 1993. Right now, in the activities fund, we have over $800,000. The academic fund started just in 2009, has over $500,000. When Joanne Dorsher, the former president, stood up here this time last year, our endowment had reached over the $1 million mark. That was a huge milestone for us. We celebrated it greatly. And then if you look at that number, we're almost at 1.4 million. Not only is that due to market gains, which lots of people experienced, we actually had quite a few really large donations and partnerships that came to fruition in 2017, which you'll hear about in a minute, which we're really proud of. So not only is that growth in our investments, but it is principal growth too. This large number here shows our financial impact from 1993 till December of this year. A couple things of note. If you look at activities grants, we've given almost $500,000 since 1993 to activities in 742. Below the line shows that LEAF doesn't only survive on the endowment. We've got lots of other programs. Two of particular note that actually LEAF is sort of our flagship sort of programs. The Adopt a Classroom. We've adopted over 480 grants throughout the years. And the PAC-RAP program. I hold this program pretty close to my heart. We live and breathe it every day in my house. And it works. It works. It works. It works. So please, it works. I love it. And I want to stop here. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. As someone that is a little more of a rookie when it comes to LEAF, there's some people on this board that have a really thick history with 742 that I call on a lot. If I don't know the answer, I'll be sure to get back to you with the answer. I know who to talk to. However, I'll do my best. This is what we gave in 2017. Our fiscal year runs calendar. So this is the 2017 calendar. We run our grants in 2 cycles. Activities runs fall and spring. Academics runs in the spring. We have 2 grants for activities simply because that endowment's bigger. It's been around longer. Academics, we only run in the spring. The deadline for those is actually next Friday. I'm pretty sure every teacher, administrator, and everyone in 742 knows their grants are due next Friday. We do a pretty good job of communicating to teachers. However, we are looking at trying to get another cycle for academic grants. That's the place where people keep coming in, and that's also the place where we see the most expansion. The Fund a Need grant this year was Laura Stebner in the Talent Development Program throughout the elementary schools. Every year we work with the district to find a program that might need a little bit more than we can give at a typical grant cycle. So this year it was Laura Stebner, and that actually came through several very well-written grants that she had submitted on several granting rounds. So we use all those requests for larger ideas. A couple other things that have come out of that are some specific funds to help support students. Significant events, probably the biggest one was our homeless campaign match. 2 families stepped up and said, you know, how can you do homework if you don't have a home? So they each put up $10,000, so a total of $20,000. They said, if you can match this, we'll help really fund this particular homeless campaign. And you'll hear about that in a second. The second was the Liberty Block Party and the partnership that we've developed with Mark Bregelman and his staff at Liberty Bank. I can't say enough about this because that is one of those true community partnerships where he saw the need, we were very grateful, and we were a big part of his June celebration, and I think our partnership will deepen as the years go on. This year we also began the Activities Participation Fund as part of that Liberty Block partnership. You'll see that in a minute. That again came through several grants. Every cycle we'd see kids can't participate in wrestling because they can't afford shoes. Kids can't participate in basketball because they can't afford mouth guards. All those little bits and pieces. And so a couple of donors said, why don't we start a participation fund specifically targeted to that? And there's a very involved group of administrators, LEAF board members, and parents that help decide how those funds are distributed. We passed $1.5 million in grants allotted, which is a huge, huge milestone, and the PAC-GRAT program continues to grow. The 742 Challenge for Children, this just gives a little bit more information. In 6 weeks, we raised over $20,000. That's how close to the vest a lot of people feel this issue is. To date, we've raised $57,000. I like this graph because it shows not only that how the funds are distributed, which is important, and again, I can't stress this enough, we work really closely with the people on the ground in this. The committee itself is comprised of people who work with other agencies. We were very, very concerned that we would be redundant, and we aren't. But nearly half of that goes to crisis shelter, which is pretty amazing if you look at it. The LEAF Block Party, or the Liberty Bank Block Party that they co-branded with us, was a really fun evening in June. I don't know if any of you were there, but it led to a $15,000 gift to us. And we split it 3 ways, academic activities, and then used the rest of that to seed the new Activities Participation Fund with Liberty's blessing. Here's a quick breakdown of the $1.5 million in grants we've given since 1993. Obviously, a big chunk of that is going to be activity grants. Up until 2009, that was our primary way of granting money. There's a lot of other ones in there, the Fund a Need, the PAC-GRAT, the Adopt a Classroom, And some of those tech football, Apollo activities, direct flow through, those are when we either serve as fiscal agents or help support a particular initiative, and we have several different funds that work that way. I like those funds in particular because that's how I actually found LEAF. We started the Immersion Program Fund, and through that I became a big supporter of LEAF itself. So that's how we get many, in fact, our new donors. Here's the pack rat, the famous pack rat bus. So, obviously you're all familiar with pack rat and the pack rat bus. Those statistics to me are amazing. That just in the summer of 2017, 2,100 kids checked out over 6,500 books. And yes, there is a library, but man, if you don't have transportation, it's pretty hard to get to, even though Great River Library does a great job of having several branches. It brings books to kids who may not get them. It helps possibly bridge some of the education gap we see in the summertime. Parents love this program. Over 90% love it. I can talk to you all day about how great it is, but obviously other people think it's pretty cool too. Coming up here, the biggest concern we have for funding this program is in 2016 we gave about $6,500 to the program. However, in 2016 we gave $25,000 to help repair books, bus repairs, just general maintenance. We didn't give as much last year, and as we're looking long term, we'd like to find another large funding source so we can sustain that program long term. We've got a team of people looking at lots of grants for lots of different reasons, and they found this one. And the only reason I mention is because we'll be doing some pretty significant PR around it, and I want you to know what it is. It'll be social media based, sort of. There'll be a part of the vote will be related to how many votes you get online. However, there'll be other criteria as to whether or not you get this grant. So starting right after we all get back from spring break through mid-May, we'll be promoting that. The other thing is that it does help people learn more about PACRAT and the fact that it isn't that we help support that program. Night of the Stars has already taken place. Usually we stand up here and give a good plug for it because it typically takes place at the end of February. However, due to some scheduling conflicts, we had it in early January. Attendance was a little down, but the talent was still amazing. I don't know if you've ever been there. It's one of my kids' favorite concerts, not only because they get to see some of their friends and they've been in it, but it's also, man, there's some really great talent of all different ages, types, music, voice, whatever. It's a wonderful evening. So check next year. Make sure you get it on your calendar. It'll be at the end of February again. And again, hey, your grants are due on March 1st, teachers, parents, whatever, for both academics and activities. And I will say that the allocations committee, I've sat on this committee several times, does do a really great job of trying to partially fund however much we can. And just like you, our biggest challenge is trying to find the money for all the initiatives that we have. So we're really proud of the work that we do. There's always more that we can do. But we think we're doing a pretty good job right now. And you can always find us online, and we've got our annual meeting coming up Monday, where we'll welcome 9 new board members. We're actually seeing a big turnover, which is both good and bad. A lot of familiar faces and a lot of brain trust is leaving, which makes me kind of nervous, but we're also welcoming in lots of new parents, people from communities that may not traditionally be represented, and also a lot of new ideas. So that's really exciting. It's on Monday from 5 to 7 at the Country Club, so you are welcome to come. You'll see a PowerPoint suspiciously similar to this one. So. And any questions?
Questions? Jeff?
Can you tell me more about the Crisis Center? How that's funded? Who else is partnered with that?
The Crisis Center or the Homeless Fund?
The Crisis Shelter in regards to
So the Crisis Shelter, we work with 742 social workers. They fund, so they try to see if there's space at area crisis shelters, and if there's not, we fund hotel stays. And that's where that $9,000 comes from, out of the 19 that we spent last year. Yeah. Jerry, did you have a question? Sorry.
Well, you caught me thinking anyway. Good for you. We've had a presentation about the food program for kids who don't have enough to eat.
Yeah, fact. Yeah.
And now here you are telling us about some of our students who have.
Experience homelessness, yep.
And when I hear that, it makes me wonder whether there's some things that we need to be talking about as a community about, I mean, it's one thing for kids and families to fall through the cracks, but it's another thing for the crack to get so big that at some point you start to say, wait a minute, there's something that we're not doing as a community, and this is the wrong time to talk about that, but I'd just be interested in, because these are our kids, what kind of dialogue we ought to be having as a board and as administration as to what more others should be doing systemically to...
Well, and the Activities Participation Fund also fits in there, making sure kids can participate in activities, because we all know sometimes it's the activities that catches these kids to make sure they stay on track.
And these are great things. I'm just saying they're a symptom of either people falling through the cracks or a flaw in the system that we should be having a dialogue, and maybe we are.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why the fund question came up, because we were seeing granting requests similar to all kinds of things like that. And so we thought, let's put it all together. In fact, also it was pretty close to my heart because that's a bunch of Madison parents, which is pretty great.
Bruce.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Been listening to these reports for 6 years with a unique set of ears. I'm leaving the board now after 6 years serving. What an incredible experience that's been to see the leadership develop on that board and all of the persons that come together monthly and plan and imagine and work very hard in support of this great organization. Wouldn't be right for me to have the microphone here and not thank Mr. Henches for his leadership. When I came on 6 years ago, these numbers were pretty small.
Yes.
But the imaginations weren't.
Yep.
The imaginations and the intents were very large. And the result is what we're seeing. I think Jerry's just brought up a very good point here about this discussion regarding homeless kids being a larger one than just a nonprofit organization or just a school district. If I'm not mistaken, every single night during the school year, we don't know where 350 of our students are sleeping. 350 students, if they all come to school tomorrow morning, we don't know where they are tonight, what circumstance they're in. When we talk about achievements and successes and all of those matters, that's a significant population of people. But if it were just one, it would be a crisis for that child and or that family. And so I think when we do get people that step up, the Thielens and the Potowitzes in our community, they are saying that the community does have a role in this. But what a great organization LEAF is to channel that and to articulate the needs and disperse the funds. So I just want to say thank you for your term. Welcome to Peggy Carlson, new on the board, and Mr. Henches, thank you always for what you do.
Thank you. And thank you to you. You face some really tough decisions sometimes, and not only as the board president of LEAF, but I'm a parent, so I appreciate the work that you do. And much like our meetings, your meetings are full of thoughtful discussion. And one more point on that, that's where the mission creep comes particularly important to me. We can do things for the school district and for the kids, and that's when bringing in Otto Bremer Foundation, the Rotary, lots of other places where all these, I imagine things in Venn diagrams a lot. Where can we all intersect to help catch those kids to create a thicker safety net? And that's really important. And we have those kinds of discussions too, because we also want to be true to our mission and true to our donors' intent that we are helping District 742 students, but that doesn't mean that we also can't help other families and other needs. So Any other questions?
Anyone else? Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Next on tonight's agenda is a Discovery Community School presentation, and that's going to be done by Tammy Wilson, principal.
Good evening, Chair Dahlgren, Superintendent Jett, members of the board, and executive directors. Thank you for inviting me this evening to share the wonderful things that are happening at Discovery School. It's an honor to share the wonderful things. So I'm going to start with our video that Danny Frost had come to Discovery to film.
At Discovery, we prepare our students to be successful by working collaboratively to provide experiences
that are rigorous and culturally relevant to students, and brings out the strength of all students,
to promote their high intellectual potential. Our students are empowered by having opportunities for self-directed learning, being confident with challenges through a growth mindset, and celebrating their successes.
I love my teachers and my staff because they never give up on me. I love my teachers and my staff because they treat us all the same with respect and kindness. I love my teachers and my staff because they always tell us to make good choices.
At Discovery, we strive to ensure that our students are prepared to learn so that they can be prepared for their futures. We incorporate meaningful, brain-based movement into our day. And in the primary grades, that includes utilizing the Smart Room. In this space, students are active, participating in meaningful and intentional, playful activities that develop and enhance their visual perception, eye-hand coordination, and their fine and large muscle skills so that they can be prepared to learn how to read, write, and to achieve academic success.
Recently, we've been collaborating and co-teaching with the classroom teachers. When we plan and prepare, they bring the content and grade level standards to the lesson, and I bring the language teaching strategies. Our results have been amazing. Last year on the MCAs, we had 11% gains in readings for our language learners here at Discovery. We're very proud of that.
One of the things that we're really proud of here at Discovery is that when our students come in the building each morning, they're greeted by staff and teachers that really wrap around the whole child. We are considering the cognitive development, the physical development, and emotional development of our students. We're doing this by diving deeper into the work of Dr. Becky Bailey in her work in conscious discipline, and the professional development around that work and self-regulation is happening side by side. Our teachers and our students are learning about this together simultaneously.
As a member of the leadership team, we work really hard to empower each other, to empower our students. And one of the ways that we focus on empowering each other is by providing staff development for our teachers here. So it's teacher-created professional development for teachers. And that empowers us to collaborate together, to look at the needs of the students that we have in order to help them get the best instruction possible. So the coding of the robots is really empowering them, letting them know that, hey, I can control something by putting my thoughts together to have it do something. And just the faces that they have after it's completed is very rewarding, that they are empowered and they are capable of putting things together.
United Way is here at Discovery to support our families and empower our families. We do that by connecting them with a lot of resources that are available in the community.
It gives me goosebumps to be able to see the students coming in with their parents and how proud they are to show their parents the different activities that we're doing at school.
I'm teaching the kids to learn their own voices and develop their own projects. So it's their student voice and their student choice. Part of that is allowing them to be differentiated. They're reaching things at their own level. They can do projects drawing or painting or collage or whatever their passion leads them. And they're also being able to reach all the standards in their area, but still hitting that target.
Discovery proud! Discovery proud! Discovery proud! Discovery proud! Discovery proud! Discovery proud!
So I'm going to begin by reading the mission statement, and I want to read this because it embodies what we value at our school, and I expect this will be evident as what we do at Discovery as we wrap around the whole child. Discovery leadership team has developed a target page, which is a one-page document that states our school goals and strategies around instructional improvement. So our goal number 1 is learning content, mindful lesson planning through a culturally equity lens. Our leadership not only recently updated our target page, but they also did a professional development with all of our licensed staff to make sure that everybody knows what direction we are going and we are all going in the same direction. Our staff leads our professional development, which is in line with our target page. Although extended day planning has ended, teachers recognize the value of planning lessons, and our teams continue to meet weekly to plan their lessons. Rigorous and intentional instruction is differentiated to foster all types of talents, helping all children grow in their learning no matter where they are at in their skill acquisition. Culturally responsive learning opportunities are provided, which allow for students to share experiences to enhance their own learning experiences. This is a picture of one of our teachers at Quarry Park. Our teachers chose a science standard and created lessons at the park using technology. Our primary teachers developed the lesson using Book Creator, and our intermediate teachers created a movie trailer to present their lessons to their colleagues. Teachers use inquiry-based instruction to deliver excellent standards-based curriculum for a well-rounded education, grounded in discovery and hands-on learning. Students use creativity to solve problems and find solutions to challenges. We also believe in creating a love of learning. This young girl is engaged in flashlight reading, which is very motivating, and which in turn increases her stamina, which is her time spent on reading. Our students are also motivated to increase their fluency, and they present in front of their peers as they engage in readers' theater. Our 5th grade students are also reading buddies with our kindergarten students as they develop level 1 and 2 questions that they had learned through AVID to ask the kindergarten students. We have bilingual paraprofessionals to support academics. As I look at the demographics at Discovery, 59% of our students are Black, 20% are white, 15% are Hispanic, 5% are Asian, and 1% are American Indian. 54% of our students are EL learners. Most of our EL students are Somali, and many others speak Spanish. We believe it is important to validate the home language while building academic language. These are 2 students coding in kindergarten. The boy is a navigator and the girl is the driver. So he explained what she should do to run the program, and she was quite excited when it worked. So our students in kindergarten through 5th grade engage in coding lessons. Students communicate with each other and collaborate as they enter a set of directions, telling the computer what to do and testing their ideas. They need to be precise in order for it to work properly. Sometimes it doesn't work and they need to go back to square one and work through the steps again. Coding teaches our students perseverance as they need to use critical thinking and problem-solving skills. We recently received a W.K. Kellogg Foundation grant, which we will be using for the next 3 years. This expands our co-teaching down to preschool. We also receive additional support through co-teaching and our equity work. We will also increase our family engagement through the next 3 years as well. We added an additional preschool classroom this last year, and the result, more of our kindergarten students are coming to school more prepared academically and socially. Our second goal on our target page is learning impact, ongoing analysis of assessment through a cultural equity lens. And if you look at those boys, that is why we do what we do. This is a 5th grade STEM activity with students and their parents where they were learning about surface tension. The combination of an excellent science, technology, engineering, and math education combined with a rich arts education helps our students develop into innovative leaders essential to a global society. Having fun and celebrating is important. By celebrating positive student behavior, we find our students responding by engaging in positive behavior. As I looked at trend data, in 2016, 75% of our students had 0 to 1 behavior referrals. Last year, it was 86%. And so far this year, 91% of our students have had 0 to 1 behavior referrals. Students receive U-count slips for displaying expected behaviors of being respectful, responsible, and safe. One student is chosen from each class to be Student of the Month and eat pizza with the principal. Our students are so excited about being recognized. I've heard more than once, "This is the best day of my life." We have data-driven instruction. This is a picture of a data wall from a teacher talk. We have teacher talks 3 times a year where each teacher looks at and analyzes the data of each individual student. They know each of their students on a deep level, and discussions are centered around academic, social, emotional, and behavior needs. Our teachers also meet with their teams twice a month in data teams as they analyze data and use that to drive instruction. We believe it's important to set student goals. During goal-setting conferences, goals were set for each student with parent involvement. Parents know their child the best, and they share the child's strengths as well as areas of need, and their teachers listen. The conference also helps to release any anxiety the students may have about what to expect when they get to school. Every student at Discovery from kindergarten through 5th grade has a goal. In this picture, a 5th grade teacher is reviewing results from a recent STAR assessment with his student as they discuss his reading goal. And from the looks of it, I think the student's happy with his results. Physical education is not just running and catching. The students are challenged every day to exercise their heart, lungs, and brain. By doing exercises to cross the midline of the body and coordinate the hands and eyes together, the students are connecting the left and right side of the brain to create memories. Our SMART room has expanded to 1st grade this year. SMART stands for Stimulating Maturity Through Accelerated Readiness Training. The movement activities enhance students' large and fine motor skills, visual perception and eye-hand coordination, and auditory skills, all necessary tools for learning to read and achieving academic success. We participated in the National Walk to School Day in October because exercise before school is great to get the blood flowing and get fresh oxygen to the brain. This gets the students ready for learning. So our third goal on our target page is learning context, creating a culturally conscious professional community. We value all members of our school and larger community. All staff, students, family members, and the larger community have a voice, and they are encouraged to engage in courageous conversations to create a caring and culturally conscious community. This is one example of how our families are involved in school. Our orchestra students show family members how to play notes on their instruments during an orchestra concert. We value our families, and we are proud of the fact that they are highly involved in their children's education and participate in school activities. We also have a partnership with United Way. The goal of our partnership is to remove barriers by connecting families to resources to combat homelessness, offer opportunities for financial stability, access to food, provide community building, and partnering to provide quality out-of-school time. The outcome will be improving the lives of our families and providing ultimately student success. We recently hosted a Chamber of Commerce meeting at Discovery, having over 100 attendees. During this meeting, we had the opportunity to discuss our United Way partnership, and business leaders have offered their support as well. We had our first family bingo night that was sponsored by United Way, Title I, and Discovery, and we had close to 500 participants in this event. And because of our United Way partnership, as well as partnering with area businesses, the police department, we are able to offer academic programming in reading, writing, and math. The summer camp goes for 8 weeks this summer. We also are partnering with Great Theater for students to explore performing arts, participating in a play. There'll be photography classes, partnering through Kids Stop and offering additional enrichment activities. We are also partnering with Waite Park Police Department to offer a soccer program as part of the items that we offer. And I want to share this video with you just because I think this encompasses what we're about.
We've got the whole world in our school. We 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 got friends from Africa in our school. We got friends from Asia in our school. We got friends from Mexico in our school. We got the whole world 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 in our school.
It's a nice song.
So thank you for this opportunity to give my presentation. Do you have any questions for me?
Questions? Monica?
I like the song. We have the whole world school. Tell us a little bit about the bingo night. I heard some comments about it. What did you learn that day?
Yes. What we learned is that we weren't quite expecting so many people, since we had close to 500 in attendance, and we have just over 400 students that go to Discovery. So families came out in abundance, and we were very proud of that. And so I debriefed with our partner, with United Way, making sure we expand the space, and we'll do it again end of March. So we're very happy about that. And I was teaching a lot of parents and students how to play bingo that night as well.
Bruce Henches?
Actually, I'd start by saying thanks, Tammy, for the great job that you do and for the presentation. A couple of comments, and I have all kinds of questions, but I'll limit them to one or two. But okay. I really think that picture you have there of the two boys hugging each other ought to be part of our brand for the district and part of our logo. That's such a great picture of really what we are, along with the song here at the end. Wanted to ask you a question about preschool.
Yes.
How many sections of preschool are you currently offering at Discovery, and what percentage of your kindergarten kids come in through your preschool program?
We have 2 preschool classrooms, but there's also morning and afternoon for each
Right.
of those as
So
well.
4?
So it ends up being 4 total. I would say, I don't have the exact percentage, but a lot of our kindergartners are coming from preschool. And we have noticed it makes a world of difference in how they come in prepared for kindergarten. We are currently registering our preschool students to be in kindergarten in the upcoming school year.
Now, the funding for preschool in the school readiness program, which we use to help fund preschool, runs out. Does it run out at the end of this year or at the end of next year? The end of next year, I guess. So it will have to be renewed in the next legislative session, but it will have to be a focus of this district as well as other districts to see that the funding continues. In your data slides, I noticed you had one extracurricular activity with a picture, and that was your student council. Do we offer other extracurricular activities for students at the elementary level at Discovery?
I actually talked to my teachers about that, and with Extended Day, our teachers have been committed after school, and now that we're ending that, I talked to my STEM teacher. We'll have a group of students for STEM. We'll also expand some enrichment activities through the Young Scholars Program as well for after school.
Okay,
so we'll be expanding that this next year.
Okay, we're not doing VEX robotics or anything like that right now, or?
No, it's during the day that we're doing that, but not
okay.
after school.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bruce Mose.
First a comment, Tammy. I've purchased your book and I've read it. It's really great. Thank you very much. Are you going to write another one?
I am. I'm almost finished with the second, yes.
Help me understand a little bit. Tell me again the number of ELL or the percentage of EL learners in your school.
We have 54% EL learners in our school.
54%. And that would suggest to me that they come with all different levels of needs, different ages, and different experiences and exposures.
Yes, you're accurate.
Can you give us a sense of the progress? How do they make different progresses? Are some accelerated and come in and get out of that program and into mainstreaming sooner than others do? And is that a goal, or is that a?
That's absolutely a goal. We want to move them through so they are out of that program as soon as possible. I am proud of the work that we are doing at Discovery. I consider every teacher to be an EL teacher. And our professional development, our target page is centered around that and around our students.
I've often hear, the reminder that someone that's going to learn a new language, to become fluent in it, is like a 7-year kind of thing. Does that hold true for all languages?
I think it depends on the student. That's the average, but we see some students moving through very quickly. They're very motivated, and that's why we have more of the hands-on, the technology, project-based, taking the language barrier away. We see our students moving very quickly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jerry.
I'm interested in the summer program you mentioned. You said you have 2 months for 8 weeks.
It's an 8-week program.
And is that a full day program?
Yes, that's a good question. It's a full day program, so half of the day will be academics with reading, writing, and math. The other half will be enrichment types of activities that will include performing arts, visual arts. There will be a soccer program intertwined. There's a science week with STEM activities, just a variety of activities to not only give our students exposure, but also to help them not lose ground academically.
And have you done 8 weeks before? Is this the first?
We have not. This is the first that we're doing it, and we're very excited about it.
Because I got this belief that's totally undocumented here, that if you would take kids that are behind because of whatever disadvantage and give them 3 months or 2 months of what you're doing, that in a few years they would make up the difference. And I'm wondering, at the end of this summer, will you have data that will make me look foolish, or
we are going to have data that will make you look proud? How's that? We're very excited about this summer program.
You're going to follow these kids
absolutely
and get an idea what happens during that 8 weeks, because I think if it does make that difference. If you do, I mean, the theory is what you read from other places that are doing this robustly. I mean, seriously, with professional staff development and high-quality programs and things that stimulate learning through joy and also some hard work, that those kids gain 2 months' worth of time for 2 months of school and don't lose the time, the progress that they would otherwise lose.
Right, and I agree there. They're not going to not only not lose ground, but they're going to gain. We have an excellent curriculum plan as well.
But at any rate, you're going to have some data, and can we...
Absolutely, we will.
Hope to have that data back, because my dream would be that if it does work, that we would put Bruce's legislative committee to work and get some more funding for that, because I think it would really make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shannon.
I'm impressed by the lineup of the summer. It makes it sound really fun, and my kids would want to go to it if they were that age again. How many children are you expecting, and are you offering busing?
Yes, we're expecting between 100 and 120 students, and we will be offering busing.
That's excellent. Then just one last question. Maybe this is for Tammy DeLand. Can I view that we've got the whole world video on our school YouTube?
Yes.
That I would be able to find it on there?
Yes.
Okay. That would be great, because I just logged in and I didn't see it, but I thought, okay, that would be fabulous. I'd like to share that with people.
Jeff.
Hi, Tammy. It's kind of a follow-up question from Shannon's. Out of the 25% of the students that you say are going to attend, what's the barriers for the other 300? Why aren't they attending? Is there something we can do to increase that number? What's your thoughts?
Right. Well, typically it's also funded through targeted services, which are the students that are needed in academics, but we don't want to turn families away, so we're going to involve whole families and siblings. And so we think that's a manageable number as well, because we are involving Kids Stop and other community members and the police department. So we just think that's a manageable number to start with.
That's our
goal.
Workable capacity?
Yes.
Okay. Monica?
So I want to ask you a little bit more about the EL students. Could you talk about what are the different strategies that you use with kids, and maybe I don't know if you have numbers about EL students by grade. I'm interested in knowing in the lower grades how many students that are EL do you have, and what strategies do you use with more specifically the lower grades?
Okay, that's a good question. And so we do have 54% EL, and that's 54% of our school is EL, so over half of our students are EL, and you'll see that through all of the grades. Strategies that we found that work are co-teaching, because all students are receiving core. Then they're in small group instructions differentiated, and our EL students receive an additional scoop of language instruction. Our teachers are also trained for all, like, SIOP strategies, the different strategies that benefit all students as well. And our newcomer students also have that extra scoop to help support them. We added a lot of, like, some of the strategies are adding visuals. Our EL teachers also co-plan with their classroom teachers. And so they're able to bring that piece in to help, and they have not only content objectives, but language objectives.
Kind of a follow-up on that.
Yes.
How do you assess that, or is any difference between the way that you teach a kid that is coming to first grade, for saying something. So first grade or kindergarten, I'm not sure what would it be, but a kid that comes with a low level of language development, how do you assess that is because of the second language, or so is English, or is language development?
Well, we do have an assessment called Access that we are able to assess the listening, speaking, writing for each of our language learners. So we know exactly how to pinpoint that information. And they have the same instruction as all of the other students with an extra focus on language concepts.
Jerry, follow up.
Well, I was just going to say, we in Achievement and Equity Committee, we work on breaking down data a little more. And you know, I noticed that, as you mentioned at Discovery, the proficiency rate for EL students, free and reduced lunch EL students, is higher than the district average. And you've been growing, I mean, significantly in the last couple of years. The proficiency rate for EL is not the most wonderful way to measure progress, but, you know, it's pretty impressive, and the same in math, significant growth. So
if you think back to the target page, everything we do is intentional, and we're looking at the data. We look at individual students, what their needs are, what programming we have in place, and we're always monitoring and adjusting to support our students.
Thank you.
Bruce, maybe I would ask one more follow-up of you, Tammy. Thank you. You had a picture showing a student and a teacher looking at their STAR goals.
Yes.
The progress towards their STAR goals. I think really one of the great things that this district does is that at the start of the year, teachers meet with parent and student and set goals, academic goals for the year, and then they are monitored throughout the year. Can you talk a little bit about how that is working, and are kids achieving the goals that they and their parents feel are important for them? Do we have any evidence or?
Yeah, and I have some anecdotal evidence. Just talking with our teachers, they said students setting those goals has made a tremendous difference because our students are now empowered to reach their goals, and they're very empowered to be part of their education and do better.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Jett.
The one comment I wanted to make was Tammy does a wonderful job, not just in what you've seen today, but in terms of fostering that community and making sure that her students and families feel safe, valued, and the fact that there's a moment in time this year that I haven't shared with the board, but she and her staff were making sure that, because we've had conversations here in the board about students or families that would choose to leave District 742. And one of the things that she did early this year, she and her staff talked to families, and there has been this trend at Discovery as it relates to winter and transportation and things of that nature. And the research that she and her staff did, it made it so that we have approximately 30 families or students that are remaining within the district that had concerns about transportation in the winter elements. And by her keeping track, I know that Mr. Von Korff talked about data. Her and her staff have kept track of data and the rationale and reasoning, and they got to the bottom line of, as a district, we could provide some transportation if we researched it. And it was just a nice job by her and your staff, so I just need to commend you for that and just all that you do. And you hear it from the board, but from us as an administration, just thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is advancement via individual determination, AVID presentation, and it's Jane Green-Schill, who's our AVID liaison.
Great. Thank you, Chair Dahlgren, Superintendent Jett, board and directors and executive directors. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come and share with you about the AVID system. What is AVID? AVID is advancement via individual determination. It was an educational system. It's not a program, it's a complete and comprehensive system that was developed by a teacher in San Diego in 1980. It was developed because she saw her students with potential that weren't able to get college and career ready. The AVID system provides research-based strategies for educators to improve career and college readiness for all students, especially those traditionally underrepresented in higher education. AVID was started, as I said, in 1980, and today it serves nearly 1 million students in more than 5,000 schools in 44 states and 16 countries and territories. Its impact is worldwide. I think it's really important to compare our two mission statements. District 742's mission. Our mission is to create a safe and caring climate and culture in which we prepare, engage, educate, empower, and inspire all learners in partnership with their surrounding community to be successful in today's and tomorrow's society. Comparing that to AVID's mission statement. The mission of AVID is to close the achievement gap by preparing all students for career and college readiness and success in a global society by impacting the instruction, systems, leadership, and culture of the district. You can see that there's a great deal of overlap and consistency between the two mission statements. That's what makes it such an incredible system that we have been blessed to be able to bring to our district. There are two facets of the AVID system. There's the AVID elective, which targets historically underserved students that have been underrepresented in post-secondary education and career readiness. And then there's the school-wide system, which impacts every single student across the board. Currently in our district, we have AVID elective in grades 7 through 10, and we have the AVID school-wide in grades 4 through 10. There's also a post-secondary component that's available. We have a couple post-secondary institutions in the state of Minnesota that participate in that, both Mankato State and Augsburg College. I think it's best to hear from the students about the AVID elective class. This is a video that was completed and created by our Tech AVID elective students.
Can I help you? Hello, I'm Rama, and I'm here to tell you about AVID.
AVID? What's AVID?
Okay, so let's begin with some explanations from some teachers at our school.
So if 90% of what happens to you is in your control and 10% is controlled by the world, then who's really in control of your future? It's you. Oh, hey, I didn't see you there. I'm Chelsea Boker, and I teach the AVID elective at Tech High School. So the AVID elective is a place where I can teach you the skills that you need to be successful in AP and honors classes, get college credit while you can, right? But also, I'm going to help you get into college, and I'm going to help you be successful in college. Now, I really think that you should think about joining AVID, especially if you're determined to make a difference in the world someday.
And here's what some students say.
This fall we went to the U of M, and I learned that the University of Minnesota is a Division I university, and it's one of the best universities in the United States. And I want to go there, but like there's other options for me, and like it's a really good school to go.
So what do you think? I'll take the application.
1 year later.
Ooh. Hello. Hi, I'm Haley.
Hi, I'm Nia.
I'm here to sell you AVID.
Okay.
Greetings. Alicia Fisher, Assistant Principal, Tech High School. Also AVID Coordinator. Here to tell you 3 reasons why you should think about joining AVID. 1, it's cool. 2, we help you get into college and be successful. And most importantly, we're career driven and want to support your dreams. Please make this consideration for your future. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll take an application.
Hi, I'm Erin. I love AVID. Here's why. Before, I didn't believe I could go to college, but now I can because I know how to study now.
May I help you? My name is Robert, and I'll be talking about why AVID is great and why you should join. Well, I believe that AVID is great because it helps prepare you for a brighter future. It helps prepare you by telling you about how to do Cornell notes and how to do quick writes and writing inquiry, and it's just a way to study in life, and it helps in mainly everything you do.
AVID is knocking at your door. Are you up for the challenge? Will you apply?
Yeah, I'll take an application.
So the AVID elective is an elective class, but students need to apply for, interview for, and be accepted into the program. Their parents also have to be part of the process. Because it is a full year elective, it's very rigorous, but it's very supportive. It takes the work in their other classes and helps them be successful. It's a developmental multi-year curriculum, so typically students will start in this program in grade 7 and take the AVID elective class every year through 12th grade. The big part of the AVID elective class is the biweekly tutorials, in which we have community volunteers come in and work with a group of 5 to 7 students. It's different than most tutoring that you think of. This is a very structured process in which students and their tutors are never given the answer. They work through a process of inquiry. It's incredible to watch, and I would highly suggest, if you have the opportunity to go to an AVID elective class, do it on a day when they have tutorials, and you will see conversations and higher level thinking like you've never seen before. It's extremely exciting. For the AVID elective class, the target population, as we talked about, is historically underserved students. Typically, they're first generation in their family to get a 4-year university degree. They may be low income, and they may be racial minorities, just like they see in post-secondary education. We talked about students applying and interviewing, and we're in the process of that for next year as we speak. A couple really important quotes I'd like to share about the AVID elective class. You see Chelsea Bowker, she's on the right up there. My AVID elective class started the year with average Cornell notes. They're scored in the failing range. They were taking notes down, but that's it. Now they are in the C range. Some are annotating, most are highlighting, but all are questioning. How powerful that is, not to just take the notes, but to actually use them. One of the big strategies in AVID is star note taking, setting up, taking, adding to, and reviewing. Then one of her students at Tech said, "My AVID class is not just a class, it's a family." Most of these students will be in this group together all the way through. And to go to an AVID Summer Institute to hear those powerful stories of how this class has truly made an impact on them and their future and their family, it's incredible. Currently, in District 742, we have 2 sections each at North and South of 7th grade. We have 8th grade, 3 total sections, 1 at South and 2 at North. 9th grade, 1 section each at Apollo and Tech. 10th grade, 1 section at Tech. And then we talked about the AVID elective tutors. The expected ratio is 1 to 7 so that the students can get a highly rigorous tutorial twice a week so it can help them. The expectation is as we move forward that every single AVID elective student, and you saw the statistics of which students will be taking that class or the targeted, they are expected to take 1 honors, PSEO, senior to sophomore, or AP class every single year, which is really going to make those rigorous courses much more accessible to our students because they're going to get their support in their AVID elective class. And then we have the school-wide. In District 742, AVID positively impacts every single student in grades 4 through 10. Danny did a fabulous job putting this video together. This will tell you a little bit more about AVID school-wide.
Focus is to get kids prepared and ready to think about college and to think about career and to think about what needs to happen for them to be able to find the tools and the resources they need and what's available, what opportunities are out there in terms of career, in terms of programs, in terms of apprenticeships.
When the teacher gives you an essential question, I know how to reflect off of that as far as getting the notes and then coming up with process level questioning, and that all just kind of helps me get a better understanding on the topic that we're on.
I have found AVID to be extremely helpful. Number one, it keeps them organized, or at least helps. Number two, one of the best things is they're starting to see that everything we do needs to prepare them for college. And if I forget, they remind me that we should do 2 or 3 column notes. They love doing those.
I came into the classroom today. I was getting ready to prepare the lesson and teach, and Pam said, "Slant," and everyone stopped, turned around, looked at me, leaned in, and they were ready to listen.
AVID has really increased their confidence. The students are able to write down things on their 2 column notes, and they make sense of their words. They're able to write summaries. They're able to use 3 column notes to study from, and they're able to build that confidence so when it comes test time, they're ready to go.
We also focus on a lot of relational capacity, teamwork, relationship building, public speaking skills, and a lot of focus with getting our students ready to be successful in high school.
We have 4th and 5th grade students that are able to do philosophical debates and Socratic seminars. They plan through their planner. They have a binder with all of their materials. I've seen teachers try new and exciting instructional methods. AVID has brought new things to our instruction, to our college and career going culture, to our systems, and to the leadership.
I get so excited when I talk to my 4th and 5th graders because I always ask them, what does AVID do for you? Why do you like your AVID binder, and how is this working for you? And the kids will tell me because it gets me ready for college.
Informational, organized, data, memorized, diagram, learn, prepared. When I write a topic and I take a test, it will help me, and I know the answer that it will be right most of the time.
It helped me think about my future in college. I've done better on tests, and I've made more friends.
I've had so much more confidence in the past few months than I have ever in my life.
If you have struggles, what tutorials can help you out?
The things that really help me are doing TRFs, a tutorial request form.
I learned to be more responsible with my notebooks.
I feel like it just makes me as a better person. It makes me more confident in what I can do in my classes.
I went from a C to an A within the first week of AVID.
742 proud. 742 proud.
742 proud.
742 proud.
742 proud.
742 proud.
You can see there's a lot of enthusiasm for the AVID system. AVID, the school-wide, has 4 domains. It affects the systems, the culture, the instruction, and the leadership. And you can see the AVID slant that they talked about here, the sit-up, lean forward, attend to the speaker, nod, and track. AVID is school-wide when systems are in place that support governance, curriculum and instruction, data collection and analysis, professional learning, and student and parent outreach to ensure college and career readiness and improved academic performance for all students. It encourages families to get involved. It encourages students to think early so that choices are theirs. Choices aren't made for them because they didn't take the right classes, because they didn't learn how to study. They are the director of their own future, and that's what AVID provides for all of our students. In the AVID systems, we have site teams, we have a district leadership team, we have our AVID elective class that we've talked about, the equity and access to the rigorous coursework in which our students then have the support. And you can see there's a small picture here. That's the student level assessment in which our AVID school-wide students need to be assessed 3 times a year to see where they are with their organizational binder, with the higher level thinking, with their 3-column notes, with their ability to stay organized. One quote from our targeted after-school person, who is also a 3rd grade teacher who's been trained in AVID. Oh, I went the wrong way, sorry. AVID complements the current programs and supports that we have: CLR, PBIS, Responsive Classroom, and Thoughtful Classroom, and builds upon them, providing additional tools and strategies that help increase student learning and self-confidence. AVID culture is evident when the AVID philosophy progressively shifts beliefs and behaviors, resulting in an increase of students meeting career and college readiness requirements. But it's more than just the requirements. It's the belief in the students themselves that they are capable of being career and college ready. It's the belief by their teachers, and it's a belief by their families that every student has the potential and the capability, and that our job is here to help them grow. Within the AVID culture, there's career and college awareness. You noticed in the video, every one of our schools now has a wall of opportunity, which provides just a visual of the different colleges, apprenticeship programs, military options for our students so that they can continually see that and plant that seed about their future. I alluded to the common belief in and expectation for success for every one of our students. Family and community involvement. We have family nights through AVID, high expectations of all, positive and safe learning environment, and a growth mindset. One of the biggest tenets under the culture of AVID is the growth mindset. We might not have the concept yet, but we're moving forward. And this is a great visual that is present in a lot of the AVID trained classrooms. This is a neat one at one of the AVID family events recently. A student's mother recently attended the AVID family night. She was beyond impressed that the students were able to teach the parents strategies to interact with their content. What the student was doing was showing them how you use multi-column and Cornell notes, not just to take the notes and then throw them away and never use them again, but to actually interact with them to increase the learning. AVID school-wide instruction occurs when the entire instructional staff utilize those research-based strategies and 21st century tools to get every student career and college ready. You can see the visual here is WICR, writing, inquiry, collaboration, organization, and reading is the foundation of all WICR instruction. We alluded to the growth mindset, also student leadership, goal setting, rigor for all, and culturally relevant instruction. Our first person is Katie Schneider. She is a language arts teacher at North. After I attended the AVID training this summer, I realized that my one package kind of strategies dream came true. I've been through many trainings, but this one had it all. AVID makes sense. It is organized and it is doable. As an LA teacher at North, I am able to dig in and use the strategies right away. I've noticed that when I assign AVID strategies, work is more likely to be turned in than other work that is assigned from the curriculum. AVID is not only a student's dream for success come true, but a teacher's as well. Katie Green from Tech Through the use of Cornell Notes in the Cornell Way, my 9th grade students performed better on their literature elements tests this year than last, about a 10% increase. The students are not only taking those notes, but they're truly learning how to use those, how to ask better questions through Costa's levels of inquiry. And finally, Allison, who teaches social studies at Tex. The dialectical journal activity was a great way to get students involved in primary sources. Not only were the students interacting with the text, but the students were empowered to choose their own reflection. They were able to interpret and make a personal connection to the material we were covering. One of the big tenets, especially for our younger students, are teaching them to be organized. Every 4th through 6th grade student has a planner. You can see on the right-hand side, the students and the parents go through this, what the expectations are for the teacher, for the students, and for the parent and guardians. The students all fill out their planner in the same way. They highlight when something is done. And if you come into, at Lincoln, and you come into Miss Singer's classroom, every morning the students come with their binder and planner open, greet the teacher, and explain everything that they did the night before. Talk about accountability and talk about pride that these students feel such a sense of accomplishment. Also in the AVID instruction of organization are multi-column notes, Cornell notes, really getting students to learn the fold method, but also how do you build upon your notes and make them your own. Leadership, every building has an AVID site plan, which is a lot of the time wrapped into their SIP plan. But how do they set the tone and the vision that promotes career and college readiness for all students at their school? And there's another picture of the wall of opportunity that we've provided to every school in the district. Questions?
Thank you. I'll start. I know when I look at this program, there's a lot of positives. I always hear a lot of really positive things about the AVID program, no matter who you talk to. And I know when Willie came to the district, he wanted to put in place an AVID type program throughout the district, and it was discussed as an AVID type program throughout the district for the first year you were here at least. When we went through the strategic planning process, and we had a decently funded year from the legislature, we were actually able to set aside dollars and do an AVID program throughout the district, or begin the process of an AVID program throughout the district. And it's growing and growing and growing. But I think it's an example of a program, and you watch those videos and you watch that information, and there's no way you can argue with the fact that this program has benefits in this district, big benefits. And it's a way to show our legislators that if they were to fully fund special education, and we had some additional dollars in this district, that's the types of things that we would be able to expand upon and grow. And there's a number of those programs and a number of different ways to reach a lot of different kids. And the money doesn't just go down some drain somewhere. It actually gets used for really, really good programs. And I'm glad that we were able to put the AVID program in place. One question from me would just be, do you know how many schools in the state of Minnesota participate? I mean, it was like 44 states, you said, and 5,000 schools nationally. But how many schools do you know in the state of Minnesota are AVID participants? Do you have any idea?
I do not have that data. I can certainly get you that information. I know that in the cities, it's much more prevalent. I know that some of our neighboring districts are starting it next year from Little Falls. Buffalo is starting it next year and moving up that way. But right now, we're kind of an outlier to have it. It's mainly in the cities.
Any of our immediate local, like Sauk Rapids or Sarton? No? Okay. Great program. Bruce Mose.
To start out with, I'd just like to echo what Al said. I think he hit it right on the head, and appreciate those remarks, Al. Jane, as I was listening to this, I just wrote 3 notes to myself, and I just kept reflecting on them. And one just goes back to achievement via individual determination. That then led me to a piece that I think you said is foundational to the program, a common belief in and expectations for success for all students. Then my question is this: what pathways of access do our EL students have to participate in AVID? Is there just a natural barrier that these, because of language needs, that they cannot take advantage of achievement via their own individual determination?
Absolutely not. It's very exciting because if you go into any of our co-taught classrooms, especially with our EL and our SPED learners, it's absolutely amazing to see those students because there's a lot of visualization as well. If you don't do words necessarily in your notes, you can do it with pictures, you can do it with phrases. As the students increase their English ability, that is who we want to see really populating our AVID elective classes, but they're already getting the same instruction in their co-taught. There is an AVID elective program called AVID Excel, which is something that we have looked at to see if that might be, but that's specifically for EL learners to boost them through their middle school years.
I'm really encouraged to hear that, because that just resonates with me pretty deeply, that all our students, and when we say all, and then when you capitalize all, then that means full inclusion of everybody in our district. And I'm very encouraged and pleased to hear that. Thank you for the great work you do. Gosh, I've been listening for 15 years to you, Jane, on many different things, and it's always a lesson to me when I listen to you. Thank you.
Jerry.
I just took a look in the archives on my computer, and I found where we were considering introducing AVID in 2010. And like you said, we looked at it. We actually had a Skype presentation from the AVID people, and we said, wow, that's a great program, but it costs money. And that administration at that time said, well, we can do this without paying for it, and we'll just AVIDize ourselves by kind of copying it, but really, it wasn't possible. It didn't happen. And when Willie came, he said he had the AVID bug, and we put some, with his leadership, we put some money into this, and that raises the question that I have: is AVID as expensive now that we've got it going as it would have been at the beginning, or is it sustainable, and does it have a permanent place in our budget? And are we able now to teach ourselves? Do we train our own people, or are we still spending as much money as we did at the front end?
So I'm looking at Jane, and I have my response to this as someone who comes from other districts who implemented AVID, whether it's Hopkins, Minneapolis, St. Paul. And so I'm listening to you talk about 2010, and you said it costs money. And then when my tenure begins, we actually have some funds that we can actually dedicate to implementing AVID. One of the things I think that happens is you end up having staff who have buy-in. So you have Jane and you have others, and you implement it in other buildings, or you implement it throughout the system. And then it becomes that train the trainer that has used the term, I didn't know that the board knew the term, AVIDize. You use that term AVIDize. And it's tough to AVIDize if you do not know it in the first place. So to try to do it in 2010 without actually going through the training, that's rough. But now that we've actually implemented it in our system, You have teachers who are sharing that throughout the system, even if they have not had AVID training. And they're in a building, you can see it's AVIDized, whether the principal's gone through it, the assistant principal. And so the question you asked, does it cost as much now as it cost in the initial part? No, it does not have to. Do we still want to be able to expand it and look to see if we can support and continue to grow it and might need some funding for that? Yes. But if all of a sudden we recognize we did not have the funding for it now, we have people within our system that can carry that through. We've been doing it. Of course, we'd like to expand it, but we have people who are trained in it, and so we can do some things with it.
Thank you.
Bruce.
Thanks for the presentation. Jane, is this the first 10th grade cohort of students then that are coming through?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so
yes.
they've come up through the system.
No, because the current 10th graders, this is only their second year having it, just because of where we started with it.
Okay.
So our first true cohort won't be until the current 8th graders become seniors.
12th graders. But we are seeing the progress students make through their involvement in this program. And I'm sure that you are compiling lots of data, and maybe the ultimate assessment will be, do these kids go on to some type of post-high school education? And that led me to think we've got a couple of years ahead of us yet, but is there any effort that you're aware of being made in the community at all to incentivize or reward kids who come through the program with some kind of scholarship for post-secondary education?
That is a wonderful question, because I know that that has been talked about. I know in other communities there are special funds, whereas if you go through the AVID elective program, that there are opportunities for you to apply for specific scholarships. I'm going to ask Lori.
Okay. Do you have access to what other communities have done?
Certainly. I can get that information back.
Oh. Thank you.
Monica?
How is the selection process? I noticed through the videos and the presentation that there is a sign up or so is there a recruitment, or can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Certainly. What we do is we meet with currently I just finished meeting with all the 5th grade teachers because it's going to be their first year having it in 6th grade next year. So to explain to them the type of student that we're looking for, the students, the middle of the road students that have the ability, maybe haven't applied themselves, maybe don't have that background knowledge on career and college readiness. So then they look at the students that are self-motivated, that have that individual determination, that truly want to be there. We talk to the parents and the students, they fill out an application, then we interview. Students in the AVID elective part, not in the school-wide part, really have to be self-motivated. Now, does that mean that we can't give them additional tools of self-motivation? Of course. And our AVID elective teachers here do an unbelievable job. But we start by targeting those historically underserved students, and then we work our way through to make sure that we have those students that truly need that second scoop of support.
Hello. No, I was on. It just doesn't come the light right away.
Oh, did it?
So the follow-up of that was, if the student, is there any way that the students will exit the program in the middle of the program? So when does the student leave the program? And if there is any other way that, if there is more than one way to leave the program, like for example, the student is not performing or doing what he or she needs to be doing, could you tell us more about that part?
That's an excellent question. They actually do sign a contract to choose to be in there, the parents and the students, that these are the levels of work. You need to take a higher level rigorous class. You need to take Cornell notes. You need to keep your planner and binder up to date. If they don't, then there's a conference. with the parent, with the AVID elective teacher, with the principal, with the AVID counselor in the building. What can we do to help you be successful? We have seen very little attrition thus far in the 3 years that we've been doing the AVID elective. Students that are choosing to participate in this class really are starting to see the benefit. Students that choose, nope, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, we do, after the conference, if it's still not where they should be performing, are released from the class. Is that answering your question?
Yeah, but I think the part of the question, so the other part is that do they exit the program at some point? So when they do that contract, are they expected to continue to be in AVID for how long?
Yes, all the AVID elective curriculum from 6th grade through 12th grade focuses on different things every year. It would be like being in a language arts class. All the skills build upon each other, so students are typically in there from start to finish.
Any other questions? Willie, did you have anything?
So, in watching the video, Jane, today I had the pleasure of going to North. And I was there for an art show. Okay, and I had been invited by Sarat and 25 other students, but in particular Sarat. Okay, and she's an 8th grade student, and so she wanted me to witness her project, and so I made sure that I appeared. There were 20 some other students there, and so when I'm watching the video that you showed, or that you had us view or watch, I recognize some of the students. I was at the art show. It was not about AVID. Okay, this was the art show. But the questions that they engaged me in and the conversation that they had, besides Sarat, who is a product of our district, who's been here since kindergarten, who's just a joy to be around and proud to be a District 742 student, there was a young man in this video named Elijah, okay, and he's part of AVID. And the question he had for me as an 8th grader was, when I am applying to colleges, I'm asking you now, Mr. Jett, will you provide me with letters of recommendation? This was an 8th grader. And so this caught me off guard, but of course I said, the day you need that, you get a hold of me and I shall be done. Little did I know that he's an AVID student. And he let me know that he wants to be a pharmacist, and he talked about where he wanted to go to school. And the University of Minnesota is a nice place, but he was looking at East Coast and West Coast. And so when we talk about AVID and the instilling the want, the need, the belief that you can, there was a kid in this video that today I did not know was part of AVID, but there it is. He's part of AVID, and he talked to the superintendent about a letter of recommendation 4 or 5 years from now and how he could secure that. So just from me to everybody in this room, yeah, some things happen in that class.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you very much.
Next up, Dr. Marcia Beisch will provide for us a summary of the February 7th work session and a preview of the March 14th work session.
Good evening, Chair Dahlgren, Superintendent Jett, members of the board. The first item on the agenda, on the work session agenda, was the New Tech High School update. David Leopold, architect with IIW, presented an update on the design and construction progress. Progress has included the status, which included the status of footings and foundations and installation of structural steel. Next, Superintendent Willie Jett shared a current progress update on the Quarry View Education Center, which was received from John Meyer, R.A. Morton Construction Managers. He noted that construction completion is on schedule to be finished as per expectations. Lacey Locken, American Indian Program Coordinator, along with Jim Knudsen-Kolodzen, presented information on the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee compliance documentation. Ms. Locken explained that Minnesota Statute 124D.78 requires that all Minnesota districts and tribal schools with 10 or more American Indian students have an American Indian Parent Advisory Committee. School boards of districts must provide for the maximum involvement of parents and children enrolled in education programs for elementary and secondary grades, special education programs, and support services. Required documentation is to be provided to the state annually by March 1st. Mr. Knudsen-Kolodzen, American Indian Parent Committee chairperson, shared information from their meeting, which was held February 5th, at which time the committee issued a vote of non-concurrence, attesting that the school board and or district are not compliant with Minnesota statutes, and that the school board and or district are not meeting the needs of American Indian students. Mr. Knudsen-Kolodzen presented the signed resolution of non-concurrence to the school board, along with specific recommendations for improvement. It was noted that the board has 60 days from the receipt of the recommendations in which to respond in writing. Next, Sebastian Witherspoon, Director of Equity Services, along with Dr. Sylvia Huff, Director of Research, Evaluation, and Assessment, presented an overview of the Equity Department and the programs provided to students, staff, and the community. Mr. Witherspoon stated that program objectives are to pursue racial and economic integration, increase student achievement, create equitable educational opportunities, and reduce academic disparities based on students' diverse racial, ethnic, and economic backgrounds in our schools. He shared information on programs available to students, including Stay Cool in School, Young Scholars, African American Girls, Leadership Groups, Ethnic Studies, Multi-District Collaborative Council, Man Up Leadership Group, and student focus groups. Dr. Huff shared data reflecting the impact of Young Scholars, as well as the Ethnic Studies course that's available to Tech and Apollo High School students. She stated that as a result of those programs that have been implemented, graduation rates are on the rise, and average AP scores are also on the rise for our students of color. Mr. Witherspoon discussed trainings and professional development opportunities for staff, and he also provided information on community initiatives such as Parents in Action and the upcoming Community Cafe. Future plans include the goal of establishing a team to determine how to move forward in developing a 5-year equity vision plan. Last on the agenda, Carol Potter, Executive Director of Student Services, and Tracy Flynn Bowe, Executive Director of Human Resources, presented information on district implementation of several initiatives and professional development and instruction provided for staff and students geared towards reducing bullying and harassing behaviors. Ms. Potter explained that school climate is based on patterns of students, parents, and school personnel's experience of school life. It also reflects norms, goals, values, interpersonal relationships, teaching and learning practices, and organizational structures. Under the umbrella of school climate, she talked about positive behavioral interventions and supports, restorative practices, bullying prevention, harassment prevention, social emotional learning, and conscious discipline. Ms. Flynn Bowe highlighted definitions and information included in Board Policy 514, Bullying Prohibition, and Board Policy 413, Discrimination, Harassment, and Violence. She also shared data on harassment incidents at school sites as well as by category. Data on reports of bullying in our schools, in our district schools, was presented by level of elementary, middle, and high school, and Ms. Potter provided information on bullying and harassment programming that the district provides at schools as well as for caregivers.
Thank you. And Marcia, you can stay right there because you're up next for an action item. The administration is asking us for approval of the school calendar for the 2018-2019 school year.
Thank you. I believe that all of you have had an opportunity to view the school calendar being proposed for 2019 school year. I'll just highlight some of the high points, if you will. This calendar mirrors almost identically the calendar that we are completing for this school year, 2017-18. And that is, we had to make some changes to this year's calendar based on contract negotiations. And so this calendar was developed to be in alignment with those negotiations. August, we have 3 days of professional development as well as some time for teacher workshop. We start school on September, the day after Labor Day. However, if you'll notice on the back of the calendar, the notes, we tried to be more explicit, if you will, on who should come that first day. First day of school for 6th graders and students new to North and South. First day of school for 9th graders and students new to Apollo and Tech. And it's goal-setting conferences for elementary and Kennedy Community School. Also during those 3 days in August, open house will take place for our middle and high schools. And goal-setting conferences will take place in the evening during one of those 3 days. All students are in school then on September 5th. October, we have the 2 days where we are not in school for the MEA Statewide Professional Conference. In November, the 21st is a non-student contact day. It's also a non-duty day for teachers as well as all those who have contact with students. We have the Thanksgiving break, and then the first trimester ends on November 21st, and on November 30th, then we have half-day teacher workshop and half-day professional development. In December, we have winter break from the 24th through January 1st, and then in January, we have Martin Luther King Day as a holiday, and the 22nd is a professional development day. February, we have the holiday, and then we get to March and the second try ending on March 8th with the midwinter break following the end of the second try. April, we have spring break. May, we have Memorial Day, and the last day of school then being May 30th. We have a snow day, should we need one, for May 31st. If not, that will be the last day for teachers. It will be a teacher workshop and professional development. Otherwise, that day will happen on June 3rd. We've also on the back of the calendar added in a box some specific dates to just note as we plan activities to try and be cognizant of the holidays that reflect the diversity of our community. Questions?
Jeff. Marcia, back to November 21st on the 2018-2019 calendar notes, you have an explanation after every single day but November 21st.
Oh, okay.
Is that part of the Thanksgiving Day holiday, or is it?
There's no school, and it's a non-work day for staff, for licensed staff as well as paraprofessionals, bus drivers, nutritional staff. So it's again, it's part of the contractual agreement.
All right, thanks.
If not, we're looking for a motion to approve.
Also move.
And we're looking for a second.
I will second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, would you call roll?
Mr. Mose, yes. Mr. Henches.
Yes.
Monica Sigurd-Schwartz.
Yes.
Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Jeff Polreis.
Yes.
Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Jerry Von Korf.
Yes.
Motion passes. We move into the superintendent's report.
Good evening, Chair Dahlgren, members of the board. I'm going to start out with with a student focus today. Apollo Senior Kenethia Riley was named Boys and Girls Club Youth of the Year after being one of 3 finalists. Ms. Riley associates with the Roosevelt Boys and Girls Club, where she was a junior volunteer and youth leader. She also volunteers at Place of Hope and other places within the community. Next, Ms. Lariah Washington is only a junior at Apollo High School, and in her words, she is smashing the all-time leading scoring record for girls basketball. She hopes to further her basketball aspirations by playing college basketball. However, that's not all that she has her eye on. Miss Washington is an honor student taking numerous AP courses, and she wants to major in kinesiology, focusing in on sports medicine as a future career. Next, Alexis Hanley, a Tech sophomore, was named to the state 9 through 10 select choir, SATB. Soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. Ms. Hanley was selected as an alto 2. In each year, over 2,400 students audition for a seat. Judges from the American Choral Directors Association of Minnesota select the members each year. Next, 4 Apollo students signed letters of intent in the common area among their peers. Max Boats will be running cross country for St. Scholastica. Sydney Swanson will be playing soccer for the University of Minnesota Morris Cougar team. Miss Tiana Wilson and Miss Megan Lentz will be hitting the court playing volleyball. Wilson will play for St. Cloud Technical Community College, and Lentz will be playing for Concordia College. Next, Tech Vocal Music brought home a total of 14 superior and 7 excellent ratings at the CLC Solo Ensemble Contest in Wilmer. Congratulations. Now I'm stepping out of the student realm for a minute. Coach Colleen Stark-Hawes, gymnastics coach at Tech High School, has received the Minnesota National Girls and Women in Sports Day Wilma Rudolph Award for Courage and Inspiration. Gymnasts at Tech have not only seen unprecedented success on the competition floor for more than a decade, but they have been motivated by a true role model in Coach Colleen Stark-Hawes. And last, I'm going to go back into students because I would get in trouble by a group of young ladies. The Tech Tigerettes qualified for the State Dance Kick Squad competition and finished 8th in the state. Congratulations, Tigerettes. And lastly, the Minnesota School Boards Association has set this week, February 19th through the 23rd, as School Board Recognition Week in Minnesota as a time to build awareness and understanding of the vital function an elected Board of Education plays in our society. District 742 is joining all public school districts across the state to celebrate School Board Recognition Week to honor our local board members for their commitment to our community and our children. So I'd like to thank you dedicated leaders for spending countless hours away from your own families and jobs so that all of our children can get a great education. So thank you, and that concludes my superintendent's report.
Thank you. And before we move into the board reports, I just want to make mention that just in the light of the events that happened in the last week in our country, I just want to let board members know that Mr. Jett and I had a conversation earlier in the week, and we talked about security measures in the schools, and I just want the board to know that I let Mr. Jett know that he should reevaluate everything that we're doing, and if he feels that we are missing anything or we have any needs, that he should bring them to the board as quickly as he can, and that the board would be very supportive in working with him to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to make sure that our schools are safe. So that's all I'm going to say on that, but thank you, Willie, for listening. First up in our standing committee reports, Board Development, Policy, and Governance, Shannon Hawes.
Our committee met this past Tuesday, February 20th, where we discussed the school board's role in the strategic plan. It was somewhat of a challenging topic to discuss. Present was myself, Jerry Von Korf, Bruce Henches, as well as Marcia and Lori. All but Jerry were not present, I believe, when the last strategic plan was presented to the board. Am I correct on that, Bruce? Were you there when it was presented?
No.
Okay, and so, but we have a general understanding that it wasn't it wasn't smoothly received, I guess. There was some, next time we'd like to do that a little bit differently. So that's where the discussion was taking place, and I guess we're really looking for some administration advice and input as how we can have a little bit more of a cohesive process in the development and presentation of the strategic plan. So that's about as far as we got on the topic, and didn't move farther than that. But we'll be back discussing it some more.
Thank you. One thing that I would like to have you put on your agenda, probably for next month or the following at the latest, would be to start to think about if we want to have a board retreat this summer.
Okay.
And what topics we would want on that. So it's not too early to start thinking about that. Next board report would be the community linkages and engagement. Mr. Bruce Mose.
The February 22nd report for Community Linkage and Public Engagement Committee is this. The committee did not meet in February. Our next meeting is Thursday, March 8th from 10 to 11, Conference Room A at DAO. On the agenda for that meeting is a joint presentation by Scott Wallner of SCTCC and Leah Sams of CTE District 742. And then the April 12th meeting will feature a presentation by Elisa Chapman from Habitat for Humanity. In the area of public engagements, a second letter of invitation has been submitted to St. Joseph Mayor Rick Schultz to meet with myself, Bruce Henches, and Monica Segura Schwartz at a date, time, and location in St. Joseph that is convenient to the mayor and his staff. I have not received a reply as yet, but we're hopeful that this meeting will happen in late February, meaning next week or early March. Secondly, Monica Segura Schwartz and myself were invited to a community gathering at Higher Ground Church in Way Park on Tuesday evening, February 20th. We each presented separately, and then we entertained a series of questions from the persons at the gathering. I presented on student enrollment, staffing numbers, district demographics, district programs, and current district projects. And Monica presented on...
I just brought some information that they have asked me about scores, the MCA scores, and also school climate.
There were a number of questions that came to us about situations in various schools that were represented by these parents and or students, and we reviewed with them again very thoroughly the hierarchy of our school district and gave them very good instruction as to how you can get to the level of satisfaction that you need to address the issues that you have. And we went through that with them, both coming up from the parental level through the classroom, vice principal, and to the principal. And another way to get to a level of decision-making would be to come down from the board to the superintendent. And we were successful a little bit in that, but not totally. Some people were still quite wondering how they can get some of their questions and issues answered. But all in all, it was a very, very good meeting, and I think Monica and I are hopeful that we can promote another one of these community gatherings yet in April, and we'll see what the summer and the fall bring. Mr. Chair, that's the substance of my report.
Thanks, Bruce. Next is the Legislative Committee. Bruce Henches.
Did we skip over finance? Or we're going to? Okay. Okay.
We're going to move finance to the end anyway.
Okay,
because
all right. That's fine. All right, yes, the Legislative Committee did meet on Friday, February 16th. As everyone probably knows, the legislative session has begun as of Tuesday of this week and will run through May 21st. On February 2nd, Representatives Jim Knobloch and Tama Tice took the time to accompany me to the AMSD legislative preview in St. Paul. There were several dozen legislators in attendance, as well as 100 or so superintendents, administrators, and school board members. Probably the best line of the day was delivered by Scott Kuhnquist, the executive director of the AMSD, when he opened the session and noted that it was Groundhog's Day, and since it was sunny out, he said that the groundhog had seen its shadow, and that means that the legislature will solve the special education cross-subsidy crisis within the next 6 weeks. It got a good laugh, but I think it made the point that that was certainly the focus of the day in terms of the folks there from representing schools that are part of the AMSD. Following those comments, several superintendents did make presentations. One of them was Kate McGuire from Osseo, who explained in detail the impact of the cross-subsidy on that school district. And frankly, the things that she talked about are the same kinds of things that we have talked about here in this district, except they have a $21 million cross-subsidy, but made the point very eloquently, frankly, about the crisis of that. The superintendent from Mounds View talked about allowing school boards to have the authority to renew levies if there is no change in the amount per pupil that the levy would raise. And they pointed out that in the last 74 cases where there has been a levy with no change in the amount asked, it has passed. Yet school districts have to run these levies and spend time and money away from education in order to do that. And the rest of the presentations by the superintendents pretty much dealt with the reimagined plan for Minnesota. Commissioner Casalius was there and representing the governor and talking about the governor's plan for this legislative session. She indicated that the governor will continue to push for reducing the special education cross-subsidy. And in the last session, he had put into his budget $45 million to go towards the special education cross-subsidy that unfortunately was never approved. He also will continue to focus on increasing early education and preschool funding and working to simplify the required state reporting by making the world's best workforce report the only report that districts need to file. And I did note that an area of interest to me that she talked about was she referenced an article in the Minneapolis Tribune by Joe Nathan, a well-known education expert and writer in Minnesota, in which Nathan writes that fees for athletics and clubs, extracurricular activities, are preventing kids from becoming connected with their schools, and sees that as a significant issue for education to address. Following Casalius's report, there was a legislative panel made up of the chair and ranking member of the House and Senate Education Policy Committees, and they presented their thoughts about the legislative session and took a few questions. Both chairs of those committees, the House and Senate Education Policy Committees, indicated they could not support the authority of school boards to renew levies without a vote by the public, while at the same time the ranking members of those committees indicated that they did support that idea. All four legislative leaders indicated that they support a working group to look at the special education cross-subsidy and to make a report at the next legislative session in 2019 of what that plan would be. And in fact, such legislation has already been introduced. It's House File 2846, and unfortunately, that might be all that we're going to get the legislature to do this session, although we hope not. And a note here, our legislative committee, and that is made up again of board members Shannon Haas and Jeff Paul Rice, myself, and Peter Hamlick, have sent 12 letters to legislators, including our local legislators and the chair and ranking member of both the House and Senate Education Policy and Education Finance Committees, asking them to support making District 742 a pilot and giving a school board the authority to levy for the cross-subsidy until such time as the legislature addresses the cross-subsidy. The rest of our meeting on February 16th focused on our board legislative goal number 2, one part of that, which is to seek increased funding for gifted and talented programming. And our guest was Laura Stebner, who provided us with a wealth of information about our District 742 talent development program. That effort in Minnesota is currently funded at $13 per pupil across the state, which is woefully inadequate and insufficient to make a significant impact in programming for gifted and talented. And the proposal in our legislative platform is $39. It also is the same for the Minnesota Association of Gifted and Talented, who are focused this session in trying to get the legislature to put funds towards that programming. Laura mentioned that she shared with us a handout that she had given to Representative Tice that dealt with funding for gifted and talented, and I have attached that handout to the third page of the minutes of our legislative committee. It might be interesting reading for you, but she talked about the program, and then lastly talked about the fact that although this district is committed to providing challenging academic opportunities for all students, an increase in funding would allow us to do much more, including, and just to quickly run through the 4 things that she discussed with us, increase the amount of students being identified and served. Unbelievably, the state requires that we identify students who should qualify for gifted and talented programs, but doesn't require or sufficiently fund such programs. 2, increase the representation of typically underrepresented groups of students due to increased funding for culturally sensitive identification tools. For example, assessments for EL students to identify kids with high-leveled skills. 3, increase professional development for all educators who work with gifted and talented students. And she emphasized that teachers need to be talent scouts so that we find those kids in our student population. And then lastly, to provide a variety of program options to meet student needs rather than a one-size-fits-all approach. Laura left our committee convinced that we need to do everything we can to encourage increased funding for gifted and talented education in District 742. However, we would note that if we were successful in addressing the special education cross-subsidy, and this district had $11 million that it currently does not, those programs could be supported with that additional funding also. And our meeting adjourned then at 9 o'clock, and the last page in the minutes is the sheet that Laura provided for our committee.
Thank you, Bruce. Next, Monica for the Personnel and Negotiations Committee.
Thank you. The Personnel Committee met in February 7th, and we reviewed the language changes in the executive contracts. We also reviewed the superintendent evaluation and the contract renewal timelines for the superintendent. We received an update on the process for filing administrative vacancies for 2018 and 2019, and we had a discussion regarding the planning and preparation for supporting substitute teachers. That's my report.
And as with Shannon, I assigned some stuff. I'm going to just say, on personnel and negotiations, we've got to bring our superintendent's evaluation back in line. That would be sometime over this summer. And I know that we wanted to reevaluate how we handle the interviews, and I think that we should probably look at that process very soon. And you may want to talk about that in the committee too.
Ahead of you, we already have the superintendent's evaluation online for discussion in our next negotiation meeting.
Perfect. Jerry Von Korf, the Achievement, Integration, and Equity.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. We met on Tuesday, February 20. Experimentally, we asked that the first approximately 10 minutes be devoted to kind of a short summary of what's going on in teaching and learning, with members having the opportunity to raise issues in advance. And I thought that worked really well. In that 10-minute period, we had a little written report on dyslexia. We have sitting here and here 2 board members with family members who have advanced degrees and practice professionally in the area, so we're kind of a hot panel for that. And I'm been in regular contact with Minnesota's Decoding Dyslexia. We correspond regularly, and I guess the starting thing I want to say about that is that all over the state, well, let me back up. We had a presentation at the board. We had a number of folks come to us who said that their children or themselves discovered that they had dyslexia through other means other than school district, and that their needs were being met through other means other than the school district, and what it meant to them to get their needs met, and what a transformative, the amazing transformation once they could start to read like the rest of us, and kind of asking us to do something so that they didn't have to buy those services outside the district, because there are literally dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of people in central Minnesota and across the state who are getting their needs met in dyslexia by buying the services from people like my wife and Shannon's sister. And believe it or not, both of our spouse and our sister are actually interested in putting themselves out of work. They're really advocating that the public schools meet these needs. But what I hear from Decoding Dyslexia Minnesota-wide is that the State Department is kind of moving at a snail's pace implementing, that across the state people are struggling with where to find teachers who can deliver, struggling with having the resources to do identification, and I think even though we're really working on this, I think we're no exception to that. We've got just a long, long, long way to go. And the kind of the way I think about it is, imagine if we decided that we were unable to provide appropriate service to any student who was autistic, and we just don't know how to do it, and we wouldn't be doing it, and we'd be telling them to go out and find a tutor. And that's kind of what's happening across the state in dyslexia, partly because some of them aren't special ed eligible, and partly because we aren't training people in how to meet the needs of these kids. And so it's just a huge issue. The Decoding Dyslexia is telling me that most of the schools of education are not training teachers. We've heard that it's not mentioned at St. Cloud State in reading courses, and that some of the students are volunteering to make presentations. So it's just a huge, and we're talking 15, 16, 17, 18% of all students. So it's a big deal. I've included here the update from the department, the progress report, I've attached something I got from Decoding Dyslexia, which is their rendition of the statutes requiring all school districts to screen and identify students, and once identified, to provide appropriate services. And I had an inside track to the presentation that Connie gave to the, she was invited to make a presentation to the committee. It's a presentation that she has been making around to schools and school districts in the area. What can you do to systemically deal, and if Connie were here, she would say, you need to do Orton-Gillingham focused instruction, and that you can't do that by just pulling out the materials that you use for RTI and just do more of it. You need to do something fundamentally different. And so there you have that. And then the rest of this is self-evident. I've put a couple of paragraphs about what we heard, although I said that I had attached the curriculum cycle, but I did not. Then we spent a lot of time on ELL preview, and that's coming next meeting, right? And so I think rather than give my summary of what I heard, that we'd be better off to, take that up when the presentation is made. So that's my report.
Thank you. And then last, and I'm just going to step in for a second here, Jeff, because I sense some angst among some board members on this in this last piece. Yes, Monica, did you have a question for Jerry? Or yeah, yep.
I wondered if the equity committee can work in looking at equity in arts participation through the school, and what is we're having our arts review, and I'd like to see if there is so what are the recommendations from equity about art participation of the students through the district?
So the arts is in the curriculum cycle. So I hear that when that presentation is made to us, that we should be asking some questions about equity, and I'm sort of, go ahead. Okay?
Okay, so just to clarify a couple of things, yes, we have a closed session scheduled at the end of this meeting. The intent, during Jeff's report, he's going to bring forward from the Finance Committee a recommendation. And the intent at this meeting is not to have a discussion about whether or not we should do anything with this building. The intent of the discussion here is in open session, right here, sitting right here, we want to have a discussion, and the intent of the discussion is to say, okay, here's the Finance Committee's recommendation to the superintendent. And then we would ask the superintendent to take that and bring forth his recommendation to the workshop, where we could have a full discussion as a board. But the discussion that I would like to have here is what items and what information do we need from the superintendent to have a productive discussion in our workshop. And then after that workshop, if we decide that we're ready to make a decision on the Wilson building, then we would come back at the second meeting in March, and we would make a decision on that based on the superintendent's recommendation. The closed session portion of tonight is simply so that we can discuss with Willie what would be the board's expectations of pricing. We've had pricing estimates from little or nothing up to $600,000. I mean, it's a huge gap. And where does the board feel comfortable? And just to give Willie some kind of direction on what he should come forward with to a work session so that we can have a discussion and not have to go into another closed session at the work session and have another long discussion about that process. So that was the intent of the closed session at this meeting. Again, before we would go into closed session, we need a motion and a second, and then we'd vote on it. So if the board chooses not to, then we won't, and we'll just wait for the work session. But I'm going to turn it over to Jeff and let him do his report, and then we'll go into a discussion.
Thank you, all four fellow board members.
Hope I didn't steal your thunder.
No, I hate thunder.
Can I ask a question before Jeff does that? Because I think it has to do with Jeff's report. Why? It seems odd to me that a committee is coming forward with a recommendation prior to getting input from the administration on the recommendation. Recommendations usually come forward when they come forward from committees are recommendations from the administration and the committee? I can't think of examples where it wouldn't
in this case, Bruce, the superintendent needs some information from the board to be able to do that. And
sure, okay, and I can understand that, but then why would the committee make the recommendation? Why don't we just report the summary of what the committee heard and then ask the questions? I mean, I'm just wondering about that.
Either way, it would come forward at the next meeting, or at the workshop,
right,
with a recommendation from the administration. We're not asking for any action from the board, so either way, if you want to consider it not a recommendation from the finance committee, but a dissemination of information from our finance committee meeting, that's fine. We don't meet again as a finance committee before that meeting, so it would be difficult for us to do it. I mean, it's a good question. Okay. I mean, it's a process question, but we're not looking to make any decisions tonight. We're just looking to have a discussion so that we can give Willie some information and give him some ideas on what information we would like to see coming from him and the administration before that workshop meeting. So.
Mr. Chair, I'll save what I really would like to say during the motion, but I just want to make it clear that I have grave concerns about going into closed session for what it is that you want the superintendent to hear. And we can talk about that if there's a motion, but I'm not going to be able to articulate those concerns in 10 seconds.
I guess I'm probably jumping in too. I want to talk about why we have to have it a closed session. Why can't we discuss it openly? What is it that we can't talk about? Why do we have to close it?
Because I think there's more than one buyer out there, and I don't think it's fair to any of the buyers if we start discussing what our expectations are publicly.
Well, we need to have that.
Let's have Jeff give his.
Okay.
All right. School Board Finance and Audit Committee met on February 15th. Present were members Jeff Porvis, Amy Scullerud, Willie Jett, Al Dahlgren, Scott Andreasen, Monica Sakura Schwartz. Our guest was Gary Ganji. We also had some observers in the room: Glenda Bergeson, a Wilson neighbor, Amy Bonfig, and Dwight Funenstein, representing Little Saints Academy. They were notified, as they always are notified when we have Wilson on the discussion items. The Wilson appraisal. Amy handed out and reviewed a real estate appraisal report for Wilson. The property is currently zoned residential, and this valuation is based on the current zoning. The city has expressed no interest in rezoning. The Finance Committee recommends to the board that we ask the superintendent to begin the process for the possible future sale and listing of the Wilson properties for sale. Next discussed was purchasing policies. Amy handed out and briefly reviewed the current purchasing policies. She recommended that all of the purchasing policies be repeated with the exception of 740, which she has revised. Suggestion was made to incorporate some checks and balances into the policy. Amy will make this revision and bring to the March committee meeting for review. Amy also reviewed a use of district equipment policy that she has developed. Next on the agenda was the schedule membership of the Finance Study Group. We have received 4 of the 25 surveys back. The committee has decided to discuss the results of the survey at the March committee meeting. The committee decided to schedule the next finance group meeting for June to discuss the budget and profiles. A little background on that, the finance study group meets 4 times a year. The group felt that might not, well, that's probably too many times, so we're kind of maybe going to meet less. Next up on the agenda was a transportation study. Gary Ganger is requesting that a study be done for our transportation department. There are 2 companies in Minnesota that do these surveys, and one of the companies cannot do one for at least a year. The cost of this type of survey is basically anywhere from $3,000 to $4,000, Gary said. The committee agreed that this should be done, and it does not need board approval. Last on the agenda was the new district offices construction budget. Amy handed out and reviewed the estimated construction budget for the new district offices building. Gary stated that the $25,000 budgeted for technology may not be enough to do all we would like to have done. We would like to have the ability to video stream all board meetings from this location, but the $25,000 budget is probably not enough to do this, as well as other technological needs that need to be done. If other line items come in under budget for the project, that may free up some money to add more money to the technology budget. If not, we would ask Eller to develop a plan that would allow us to do the desired technology in stages spread out over time. Changes to the HVAC system are due to the system not currently working at the most optimal level. Amy will get more detailed information from Winkleman explaining the changes to the HVAC system. And as you'll see in the graphs provided by Amy, the electrical needs were a large portion of the base construction bid. End of report.
Bruce.
Can I ask a couple questions not related to the Wilson building at all? It's from the report. When you're talking about the finance group survey, I don't think we had heard about that before, but is it just a one-question survey? Do you want to meet twice a year instead of 4 times a year? Is that?
There's about 4 questions on it, or 5, I believe. I mean, Amy can maybe speak to that more. We presently meet 4 times a year.
Right.
And it seems like we have a lot of information twice a year. So we wanted to make it a more informative meeting, and we wanted to engage the people on the current list. Do you still want to come? What's driving you? What's a better time? What's a better date? How often should we meet? We're trying to get some feedback to make it a more efficient meeting.
So it's just an internal survey of the finance. Okay. Yeah. Then the other one that kind of got my interest a little bit as a former transportation director, this, your minutes say that Gary is requesting a study be done of the transportation department. You, when you read it, said for the transportation department, which, and what is it about? Or
in my memory, and Gary can clear me on this, I don't know if one's ever been done, and our transportation department is very effective, but it's always good to have an outside set of eyes come in and go, hey, you're doing great, I would do this, I would do that. So that's what the purpose of the study would be.
So it's I mean, is it a study of our department, or is it a survey of parents, or?
No, it would be more of a study. It would be to look at routing, just to get an outside view of that type of thing, look at our policies, our procedures, take a look at our use of our contracted carriers. We're having trouble getting drivers right now. It seems to be a trend across the state, but get an outside view on that, those types of things.
Okay. Do we still have the Transportation Advisory Committee?
That I don't know. I can look into it.
Okay. Well, some years ago, there was such a committee that might have been a good vehicle for doing this. I don't know if they have that anymore or not. But it was made up of administration, representatives from the community, area planning organization, contract carriers, etc. That
I can get some information and get back to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bruce.
Looking at the last item here, new district offices construction budget, 3rd line, we would like the ability to video stream all board meetings. Help me understand, please. Is that a governance "we" or is that an operational "we"? Who's "we"? Is it, okay.
One of the things we're looking into as we get into the new building is if all the meetings can be held there. And as we're looking at the budget, we're seeing if we could cable cast from there. I think we included that in one of the board reports. We have Ellert, who's done some of the other studies for us, looking into that, looking into costs. If the costs are too high, we're looking, is there a way we could still use this facility and phase that in? And we were just updating the finance committee as to the status of that.
So it's kind of an inquiry at this point, a curiosity about whether we should do this. Would something like that, is that strictly an operational matter? If it is, I'm all done. If it's governance, then I'm questioning it because I've not heard of anything going around here that we have even discussed that and had a vote on it.
What I would say is to get the equipment, to get it set up would be operational, and once we have that information, we could bring it forward to let you know what your options would be for the meetings.
I'm satisfied with that, thank you.
Are we asking for the work session already, or we're still in?
For the what?
You said that you wanted to ask us for what would be useful for the Willie to bring to the work session. Are we in that part yet?
Yep.
You have to have a motion.
Yeah.
What motion?
No,
work session.
not the future agenda items. But I said that we were looking for items that we would like the administration to bring answers for.
Are we on that part?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I do have some items that I would like to know. So about the building, I would like to know if we have a policy about how do we handle selling of buildings, and if so, what is that policy? I also would like to know why do we need to sell the building, and what are the issues in being in the rental business, as our finance chair was quoted in the paper.
What was the second question?
Why do we need to sell the building? Thanks.
Jerry.
So I'm having trouble separating what you're asking us to now to what I fear is about to happen, when I got my agenda, there was an agenda item that says close the meeting to discuss Wilson, and pursuant to section 13D05, and I went to 13D05, and it allows only the discussion of the asking price for the sale of personal or real property. So all of the things that we have yet to resolve before we decide to sell, those are all public things. But the other piece of it is, and maybe this is a broken record, but here is another finance budgetary issue that's coming to us with a blank agenda. And
I'm going to stop you there because it's not coming to you. It will be coming to you, and I'm telling what the purpose right now is this is our opportunity to say before it comes to us, what would you like to know? What answers would you like to have asked so that we don't come forward with a blank agenda or with a blank?
If that's the agenda, but if you're thinking we're going back in the room and have a discussion, then I do have something to say on this, and I want to be able to speak my mind. Is it the intent of the chair to take us in the back room and have a closed discussion about something? If so, how am I going to be heard on my belief that that's not legal and it's not wise and it's inconsistent with what was presented to us in the agenda? And I don't believe if we are going to do business in the back room that it should come to us on an agenda that simply says Wilson. And if we're not going in the back room, then I'm going to relax. And I'll be happy to participate and tell you what I'd like to know, but if we're going in the back room, then I want to be heard on that topic, because I don't think it's appropriate.
My intent with the closed session was simply so that we could give some direction as to what that there's such a wide, and I don't know why that's illegal. It says right in the statute that you can, talking about price, that you can go into closed session to determine the asking price for a real or personal property to be sold by a government entity.
To be sold. But you're putting the cart before the horse. We don't have a recommendation coming to us on the agenda. The administration recommends the sale of Wilson, and here is why, and here's the information that you need. We got an appraisal dropped on our desk before the meeting, and some budgetary information and some sort of an explanation, all information that I don't think we should get 5 minutes before the meeting. That's information that I would like to process, and I think it's unthinkable after reading what's in the newspaper, what was in the newspaper, which could be misquoted, that we don't have closure as a board on the policies that we're going to apply to determine the price. And we can't have that discussion, the discussion that we need to have. Monica's asking a question. Mr. Polroyce is quoted as having a different opinion from the superintendent. We can't do that in closed session. That's not determining a price, that's just determining a public policy. And there's no need to put it do it in closed session, and it will make people angry if they see us do it. They're going to say, what are they doing back there? But the way this should have happened, in my opinion, with great respect, is the superintendent should have told us that he's going to recommend the sale. There should have been the background information that we were just given, should have been given to us a week before. This is not an emergency. And then we could have sent in our questions, and I think it's great that you're asking questions, but we're not ready to go into the back room. If we're going to use a real estate professional, that real estate professional is going to have recommendations to us as to what we should ask. I would have been running around the office getting people's opinions, and we're getting emails in at the last minute from people. But the reason that we put stuff in the agenda a week before the board meeting on something like this is there's some controversy, there's some hard feelings, there's some people with opinions, and even information that might help us do our business. And we're doing it without that information in closed session. And I really think it's a mistake.
You're totally taking out of context what the closed session was for, but I hear what you're saying. I'm not in a hurry. I'm not in a hurry at all, Jerry. It can take us till August. I don't care. It can take us 2 years. There's no emergency to sell that building.
I'm not suggesting there's even...
I believe that there was
Point of order.
a wish for it to move forward, and so we brought this to the board here. Simply saying we want to have a discussion in 2 weeks when we have our work session. So if you got questions that you want answered, let's give the superintendent some information so that he can bring that information, and we don't sit in the work session and say, hey, Willie, I have a question for you, and he doesn't have an answer. I want him to be able to be prepared for that meeting too.
And that part's totally appropriate. So let's get off the table that we're going to...
I guess the reason I put that on there is because I felt that with as wide of a band of pricing that we've had, and we've gone through this process of getting that building evaluated several times, and every time it comes back way different. I just thought it would be wise to be able to say something to the superintendent to say, hey, this would be acceptable to the board when you make your recommendation. But we don't have to. That's why it's on the agenda.
Mr. Chair?
So, yes, Bruce.
I just want to say that I do not consider what our colleague, Mr. Von Korf, said to be out of context. I do not consider that to be out of context. Responding to...
You don't think that it's out of context that he's saying that I was planning to take the board back there to have a discussion about the sale of Wilson. That was not the intent of the closed session being on the thing. The intent was so that we would have the ability to go back and discuss the price that we would be looking at for selling that building, and that to me falls within the open meeting laws. He's saying it's different.
Okay, but I'm just saying, I'm listening to this as we all are, and I'm just listening, I believe, to a stronger argument from Mr. Von Korf than respectfully your argument.
Okay. That's why we argue. That's why we have conversations. That's why we're doing this.
Mr. Chair,
I don't think that I have to be 100% right before I come to every meeting. That's why there's 7 of us.
You're right there. I have some questions, but I don't know if they're appropriate at this time or not. But I am totally frustrated with the fact that this Wilson building has sat as long as this has, and we haven't been able to come up with a sale of it. And I was on the Finance Committee, I think it was for 2 years. And I came on shortly after the first time that we attempted to sell it. And the first topic that was brought up when I came on to the Finance Committee was the Seattle plan of how something can be sold to there can't, and I shouldn't use sweetheart deal, but I mean, you can sell it to somebody that you want to under Washington law, who seems to have a good intention for using the property, and it seems consistent with the district plan and everything. I even offered to work with somebody to check on the Seattle plan, but it was made very clear that isn't Minnesota law. We have to sell it to the highest bidder. And so we struggled for the time that I was on the Finance Committee to ever come up with a plan to sell it, even though we said, you know what, I think the administration... Well, we decided that we wanted to sell it because we're not in the real estate business to lease. Frankly, we're probably losing money right now each month that we lease it. And so it should be sold. Well, I don't know how we arrived at the current value of it, the appraised value, when we had a couple of years ago an appraised value of $400,000. Just like
it was actually higher.
Yeah, it's okay, but we got an offer much higher than the appraised value, apparently. That's the question I would ask, is how did we get to these figures? And I had just found out about these figures very recently, so I don't know that. I'm for selling the building, but...
And Bruce, I'm going to say that I sat in the Finance Committee 2 years prior to you coming back onto the board, and we were discussing it back when Dennis Whipple was chairing and back when Cindy Harner was chairing the Finance Committee. And it's never gotten past that discussion of how do we go about doing this. And so we're finally at a point where we're going to bring it forward, and we're going to have the discussion, and we're going to try to get that thing listed and get that building sold, because I believe that is going to be the recommendation of the administration. Maybe there'll be a change of heart or a change of mind, but I believe that will be the recommendation. So let's move it forward and do it legally and do it the way that we have to do it.
I would certainly even make that motion, but it seems to me that we might have hurt ourselves by these numbers coming out publicly, where maybe it would have been better to go off and pound in a for sale sign on Wilson's property and let people come to us with what they think it's worth in terms of their business. I mean, we just have so undercut ourselves that I wonder why we did that.
Mr. Chair, a building like this is going to tell us its price in the manner that Mr. Henches describes. And we don't need an asking price, it seems to me. The time that we have a closed session is when somebody offers us a price, we decide whether to demand more or whether the person who offers us the price is going to put a quick trip there, and we're contingent on rezoning, and we have qualms about allowing public property to become a quick trip. But we're certainly, I wouldn't think if we intend to sell it, to post, the $10,000 is assuming some things. And it's obviously not the only price that people are willing to pay. And we're not qualified to come up with that price. The market is going to do that, or a real estate professional is going to do it. This appraisal is just, well, and so I just don't think there's a function for trying to do what the statute allows us to do, which is to set a price. That's the only thing we're allowed to do, is to set an asking price. The policy of whether we're going to give a discount, that is a public policy. That's not setting a price.
I agree with that. Yes, Shannon.
I have a question. Do we have to set a price? Or it's worth what somebody's willing to pay for it.
Yes, but my belief would be if we're going to list the property, we would want to list it at, are we just going to list building for sale?
Well, just, if I might, to use some examples, I think we got $800,000, $850,000 for, Jefferson. And the administration was telling us we might have to give it away for $1. I mean, we got a ton of money for that building. We never would have dreamed of asking for $850,000. But the market, the way we set it up to attract buyers, and it just turned out I don't know that we've ever set a price for anything unless we were going to do it arm's length. That is, if the current occupier said, I would like to buy it, and we think that's most likely the best price we're going to get, then we would have to do that. But I don't think we know that. We need some help before.
The only way we would know that is to put it on the market and entertain offers, really. Shannon?
So I'm not quite sure if we're supposed to be asking or saying what information we need, or are we supposed to be saying our opinion of the matter?
Ditto.
I would prefer this, that if we just let Willie know if there's certain information that you're looking for. And next, figure out the work session, if this is open up for a discussion on whether or not we should list that property for sale. Or if the administration is going to come forward with a recommendation, and we have a work session and talk about it, and then at the next meeting, the administration would come forward with a recommendation that we would vote on. What questions do you want answered?
Are we going to announce that in plenty of time so the community can come with input, knowing that we are going to make that decision? So will it be at a Wednesday work session and the community will know a couple weeks in advance so they can come and talk?
We have the option of having a community input or a community hearing type process if we want. I think that would be something that maybe we would want to hear about.
Yes, so I guess that's my question is, will we make sure that that goes to the media in plenty of time before the actual session.
If we followed the work session and the following meeting, there would be a month before when it would be at a hearing or for community input. Is that adequate time? I don't know. I mean,
I would say that I want it out at the St. Cloud Times. I want it announced on the media that the school board is going to allow for community input and make a decision on this, 4 weeks from now.
I want you to know I'm not angry. I'm frustrated. This has been here for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. We've been talking about this, and it hasn't been able to come forward to the board. This is, I think, the first time we've ever talked about it with 7 people.
And I appreciate that. I just want to say that my opinion is I want to make sure that we do what is the right thing for the neighborhood and at a fair value, a sale value. I will not support the highest bidder if it does not have support of the neighborhood.
It's a fair comment. Bruce.
Oh, this Bruce?
Either Bruce. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, is it, as you've noted a number of times, we're just looking for an avenue to get information to the superintendent as to what kind of questions or information he might need. Can we just do that just in our own emails?
Sure can.
Is that an acceptable manner to do this as opposed to what we...
It's acceptable with me. Is it acceptable with you, Willie?
Then not to stop any discussions, but Mr. Chair, help me get on that track to get that going in that direction so we can then close this meeting and go home and not open a closed meeting. What do you want me to do? Am I making a motion? I don't know. I'm just...
No, because there's other questions.
Oh, okay.
Monica's got a question.
It is a little bit about process, because we tend to discuss a lot here and then we don't finish the process. So I appreciate the fact that you want us to ask questions to Willie about information that we have, and we will discuss at the work session. I'd like to know what is the intention of the discussion in the work session. I would like to propose that we discuss a process on which we do the selling of the building and not to get right away to the selling of the building. I wanted to ask if that is, so what is what you have in mind, or if we are in agreement as a board of what is the purpose of the work session?
Jerry?
Here are my, I have a couple comments and questions. I would like to know where the current tenant is in terms of how it relates to their school schedules. We should be thinking about whether we're planning on evicting them or not. And I would like to know whether we need a public hearing, whether this is a school closing within the meaning of the statute. They may have already done that, but at some point when you get rid of a school, you need a public hearing. Have we crossed that bridge? The third thing I'd just like to mention is the board, the committee did look at the question of price. I was kind of on the side of you probably need to take the best price, but the committee asked me to ask our lawyer the answer to that question, and our lawyer came back and said, we are not required to take the top price, provided that we have a good reason not to. And I confirmed that in writing, and I've got copies of that. And he's not the only lawyer in the world, but he happens to be our lawyer. And he's very firm that, for example, if we wanted to make it possible for that who's there to stay there, that we would not be forced. Now at $10,000, we're not, if that were the price, which I don't think it is the top value for that building, at that number, we're not thinking about that question. But I just, people have been saying that they think that the law is what our lawyer says the law is not. And so he's saying we have the discretion to make that decision.
Al, if I
Yep,
could
Bruce.
add some more. So my question would be, we had an appraisal of the property, obviously, before we offered it last time. Why would we do another appraisal that so changes the value of the property? And so my recommendation then would be, let's offer it for sale at the appraised price from the last time, and see what kind of action we get on it. Then in the end, if it gets down to somebody's going to purchase it that we don't like for some reason, and I think we're going to be on pretty slippery grounds if we decide we don't like somebody, we're going to sell it for less to somebody else. But then you could make that decision. If it's clearly that it's going to be another Quick Trip on that corner, and we think that's not important or not valuable, we can sell it to a lower bidder, and the next year they can build the Quick Trip, and we can't do anything about it. But we can make that decision if we want to at that point. I just don't know why we would take this appraisal when we have an appraisal already.
Jerry.
Mr. Chair, I think the reason for the difference between the numbers is the assumption that the appraiser made. The person who approached us was not buying that property as is. They were buying it contingent upon receiving a rezoning that the neighbors were going to fight tooth and nail to stop, and we were going to have to kind of
do nothing,
help them along, and it was contingent on them receiving a state grant, so that money that was being paid for it was not their money, and so the appraisal that for that use is going to be higher than this other appraisal, which is going completely the other way, is the radical assumption that this building is going to be kind of like.
But Jerry, that wasn't their appraisal. That was their offer. What was the appraisal at that time? Yes, there was.
It was a realtor's estimate, I think, is it's kind of hard.
Do we know what the appraisal was at that time?
This appraisal came from.
There wasn't a full appraisal done, it was a market value analysis, and so again, it was based on similar properties that had sold, but those similar properties that had sold may have been rezoned for whatever intended purpose.
Okay, and how much was it for then?
I don't have that figure with me.
I thought I had heard 450,000 or something.
Yeah,
and okay.
And I mean, your question as to why we had another appraisal, Bruce, I don't believe that this year's committee, requested it. I think it was last year's committee, which, weren't you on that committee? Requested another appraisal? Yeah, I think you guys requested the appraisal, not us.
Well,
we got it.
I wasn't the chair of the committee, I'll assure you that, and I don't remember us requesting another appraisal. I would.
Mr. Duggan?
Yes.
Chair, I would like to call the question, move to end this discussion, call the question, and proceed from the results of that. The question was to, remind me, the question was to not go into closed session.
There's no motion on the floor.
Okay.
I think that he's moving to end the discussion.
Well, but there is no motion on the floor.
I think that he's moving to end.
No motion to close the meeting.
I think that
right
he's
now.
making a motion to end the discussion, and I will second that motion.
I guess I made that motion to end this discussion.
A second.
Motion and a second on the floor, Mr.
Call the
Chair.
roll.
Shannon Hawes.
Any discussion first
Oh,
on
yes.
that?
No.
Well, were we going to have discussion first?
No, that type of motion doesn't have discussion. That type of motion doesn't have discussion. You call to vote.
She's probably right.
Monica, why don't you tell me what I'll second what you want to do. You explain the motion.
When you make a motion to end a discussion, you just roll call. You don't have a discussion about the discussion of ending the motion. That type of motion doesn't have a discussion. So you just call roll, and if we end the discussion or not, and that's it.
So your motion is to end this discussion?
Your motion is to end the discussion. I'm seconded.
Okay, I move to end this discussion.
I second it.
Okay, call roll.
Shannon Hawes.
No.
Jerry Van Korf.
Yes.
Jeff Polreis.
No.
Al Dahlgren.
No.
Bruce Mose, yes.
Me.
Monica Sigurd Schwartz.
Yes.
Bruce Henches.
No. Mr. Chair, you pointed out we have not had a full board discussion of this issue yet. And I think that it's of value to exchange thoughts and ideas about it, even though some of those might be far out there or whatever, but the superintendent and administration is, I assume, listening to the discussion and would be able to gather ideas on what to bring back to us better than if they talk to each of us perhaps individually.
Yep.
But anyway, so I think there's value in the discussion is what I'm saying, and that's why I voted no.
Yep, well, I voted no because I still had some things to say, and I think there is some value in the things that I have to say, so I don't think I should just be cut off. I don't cut off other people on this board. I make a point of saying that I don't cut off other people on this board just because I don't like the things that they're talking about. So this discussion can keep going for a little bit. One of the things that I would like to know, Willie, at this next meeting is there's 3 parcels of land. Would they be sold individually and listed individually? And would that change the value of those properties? Or would we sell it as one piece of land? Jerry.
Mr. Chair, in each of the successful sales that we've had, we consulted with people who know something about real estate, not for pay, but I mean there are a lot of people who will have opinions, and you know, the appraiser has an opinion, but you know, there are a number of people in town who know about real estate, and I would like to know that when the administration makes its recommendation, that you've talked to some people who think they know about this and ask them, what's the best way we can move this property?
Shannon?
Could I see a map of the 3 parcels, and then Little Saints Academy, which parcels are they using, which ones are they renting, and who's parking on them?
I'm sure that they can bring that up. One place you can go, though, just for your information, is if you go to just Google Stearns County plat map and look at that property, and you'll see the 3 parcels that are owned by ISD. So,
yep, I can do
Monica.
that.
Mr. Chair, with all due respect, I just wanted to respond to your comment. I'm not trying to use parliamentary procedure to shut off people, but I like to move the process. So I apologize if you felt that the motion was meant to shut you off or to shut up somebody, but the discussion has been also involved into what I believe is going to be discussed at the work session, and not only the questions that you asked to bring to the superintendent about the information. And I felt that it was appropriate to second the motion that Mr. Moss was doing so we could move ahead. So I just want to apologize with you and other members of the board that if they felt that we were trying to shut them off, but that wasn't the intention.
Is there any further discussion on this item at this point?
Jeff. Willie, would you send us stuff that you're seeking? Like what you need to know from Jerry's idea was good about local experts. I mean, do you need more information from the board before you make your decision. Instead of us asking you, ask us. Make sense?
And can I know the disadvantages of continuing to hold on to the property and be the renting it out to people? What is the disadvantage to the district of doing that?
Yeah, and to me, this is a really important issue because it's not just what we're doing with it and the fact that we're sitting on this property. We're also, when it comes to Amy and Dwight who are leasing that property from us, they have had no direction in their lives for the last 6 years as we have sat here and debated and debated and debated and never been able to make a decision or bring anything forward. So it's going to come forward. It's going to come forward at the next work session. Willie, I hope you have some information. Board members, if you have any other information that you need, please get it to Willie so that those questions can be answered. I don't want the work session to be simply a ask questions we don't have answer for work session. Bruce?
I would also like to request, and I think that we struggled to try to move this forward a little bit on board finance, is we need a policy that when we have a parcel of property for sale, we can look at the policy book. Now, I think that's where we really got bogged down as soon as we started to ask that about, can you put that in writing, is it possible, and then it went a million different ways, and there was no movement towards that. But it should be someplace written down in terms of how we do that.
But part of that too was that when we tried to do that, we came up with that there's not a one-size-fits-all policy when it comes to selling real property like this, that sometimes closed bid might be the best policy, and in another case, outright sale to one person might be, and in another place, you might want to list it.
And those options could be listed.
Yeah. But
the policy might be that it's the policy of this district to receive as much compensation, or whatever the word is, from the sale of a property on behalf of our taxpayers as possible, without selling it to a Quick Trip, or whatever it is.
Well,
that
within
we
the
want.
confines of some reasonable standard. But yeah, I hear you on that. But I think, is there any, Jerry? Yes.
We had a long discussion. The committee discussed, I wrote a draft based on that discussion, and I think it kind of disappeared with the change in, but I mean, I have a draft that comes out of our discussion. I don't know that everybody would agree with it, but it was trying to encapsulate the different ways of selling depending on the circumstances, and giving us flexibility, but also giving us a framework. I just don't know that particular policy would help us solve this particular property.
Well, if we knew what our intention was in selling real property, and we knew what options we can choose from, the board then could choose, we're going to do it this way, this time, to try to maximize our profits, but whatever. I mean, it might be, since the three of us are now on board policy committee, that you could forward that to board member Haas, and that could be on our list of things to discuss.
Sure, I think I could find it somewhere.
Monica?
The question that I asked before, I don't think that I heard any answer. So what is the purpose of the work session? Are we going to define a process on which we're going to sell this building? Are we going to have a price, or are we just going to talk a little bit about everything?
I believe that the purpose of the work session is going to be for the superintendent to bring to us his recommendation, and to give us an opportunity in a work session format to ask questions and give him the information back that he needs to bring forward. I mean, it would be at a future meeting. I'm not going to say at the next meeting, because I'm not going to box myself in. But at a future meeting where the superintendent is going to, and the administration is going to come forward and make a recommendation that we sell that we list that building for sale or sell that building. And we have to get there. And we just have not had a discussion in 6 years. We haven't, that I've been on the board, we haven't had a discussion where it's come to the full board, and it just keeps getting kicked around and kicked around and kicked around, and there's people that are suffering because of it.
So in that case, I'd like to ask to my request for the superintendent, if you could include in the recommendation a process that involves some type of a community involvement, or, I mean, if there is not a policy about how do we sell buildings or how do we account for things that have happened in the past, so I like to have that part into the recommendation. And I'm not sure what exactly I'm asking you right now, but I want to see, well, I'd like you to give it some thought about how we can get some input from others.
Well, and there may not be a policy, but there may not be a district policy, but there is a state statute regarding the sale of real property.
A procedure then that we use for this building.
To the next agenda item, which is future agenda items, and at the next workshop we're going to have a new Tech High School update, a Quarry View Education Center update, new administration office update, an EL program update, a community ed, adult basic ed presentation, annual staffing timelines, and a discussion on the Wilson building. Jeff.
Al, if I could recommend that sometime in April when Laura Stebner met with the legislative group, she did say she'd like to bring back a report about the talented and gifted, and I think she said late April, didn't she, Bruce? It was a couple months down the road. She'd like to be on the agenda.
Wasn't there a discussion that it is on our board agenda someplace annually, isn't it, for a gifted and talented report? Oh. Yeah. It would be certainly worthwhile for everybody to hear, even what Laura shared with us.
Mr. Chair, sometime in the spring, there's a couple of us who would like to have an update at the board level on dyslexia progress.
Yep, Shannon.
I was glad to hear, Alan, Willie, that you were talking about school safety. Could we have a presentation and a conversation about what do our secure entrances look like? What is our, what are we doing for school safety? And are there any other districts out there that have some new state-of-the-art system that, you know, that we're not aware of or that I'm not aware of? And how much does that cost? What would that look like? And then the other piece that I heard tonight, Tammy Wilson, Willie, when you mentioned the 30 students that are now enrolled back or staying with that school because of kind of insightful asking questions. I'm wondering if we can have a conversation about the enrollment, students enrolling out of our district, and what are other schools doing to get those kids back or to keep those kids?
When you say other schools within our district?
Our schools, yes.
Oh, Jeff.
I just want to caution you, Shannon, I really appreciate, when you do the security, tread carefully, though. You don't want to discuss everything about security in the public. You want to keep some of that in-house, so beware.
Any further discussion on this one? If not, meeting's adjourned.